God bless America. Welcome, everybody. Let's do some drag racing here on a Sunday. One more event to run. This Marathon World Super Pro Challenge. Round number one. Dragsters in the lanes. And their first pair coming up into the water box. Yeah, I believe we have Justin Fordyce and Stephen McCrory, 2010 winner of the 50K. Stephen on the lane side. $506 in to a 456. They are one full bulb apart. That'll be the handicap. Program into the Christmas tree. Curry will be leaving first. The rookie driver, Justin Fordyce from Maryland. Curry with a better light, 015. Justin a little close to the wall there, it looked like. 510 on the 506 dial in from McCrory. Gets the win. Tightens it up to a 14 thousandths finish line. 457, one over. Justin Fordyce, he was 051 off the mark. McCrory with the whole shot. Got the win at the straight. Bob Jennings. Finished first racing team from Mississauga, Ontario, Canada. 493 dial in on the lane side. And Nick Falk. Durand, Illinois into Mr. Gasket lane. Dial 480. Final start for Bob Jennings as he goes red by 18 thousandths of a second. Nick Falk, 415, 477 on the 80 dial-ins under it. 144 mile per hour. Jennings, 300s under. His 493 dial, 490, 139. Gabby Baldridge, Rockford, Illinois. A green Mullis chassis dragster, 505 dial-in, 3/10 of a second handicap going to Kenny Underwood. Runner-up Thursday evening with his Chevy Camaro out of the Jegs camp. Apparently the victim of a broken crankshaft. The Camaro in the middle of elimination started losing oil pressure, but it kept running. Kenny made it all the way to the final round before it pretty much gave up the ghost. The Willis Evans construction dragster now. That's another McCrory car. 004 off the mark, and Gabby Baldridge never gets off the starting line. 544 at 108 mile per hour for Underwood. Some problems in the drive line for Gabby Baldridge. The car did not lead the starting line, and he'll get a push back behind the tower, and we'll fire our next pair here in round number one. Mike Brumfield. And Dave Brown. 501 dial in for David Brown from the Mr. Gasket side. Brumfield from Indiana on the lane side of the racetrack. 470 dial in. Brown with a 501. Rumfield 004 has got the advantage in reaction time, and he's got the win at the stripe. 474, 135 mile per hour. David Brown, 507, 600 over at 125. Andy Schmall and David Davis. Davis on the lane side, 501 dial in. Schmall the 493. He'll be in the Mr. Gasket lane. David Davis, one's dead on. 134 mile per hour after an 013 green. Schmall was 014, runs 492, breaking out by 7 thousandths of a second. Yeah, 137. Again, buybacks available in the office, bottom of the tower. Pit side, buybacks in the office. Bottom of the tower, pit side, $75 buyback today for $5,000 to win. Buybacks available in the office. Bottom of the tower, pit side for $75. $5,000 up for grabs today. Randy Falk, Dalton Samuel, 472 dial in for the Florida racer. And Randy Falk with a 489 dial into Mr. Gasket lane. Foul start for Randy as he goes red by a foul. Dalton Samuel is 001 green, goes dead on zero. I believe that's the best package of the weekend. 001, dead on zero. Dalton Schmall, darn near takes away that Ellis Manufacturing belt grinder. Randy Falk 482, breaking out big time on that 89 dial in after going red by a foul. Sean Parker, Matt Steiner, two Michigan racers on the starting line. Parker, 505. Steiner, 498, Mr. Gasket side. Double 03 and 013. Parker, 506, one over. 133 mile an hour in a great race. 7 thousandths margin of victory. Steiner is dead on. 498 with an 8 at 137. He was 013 off the mark, and it was Sean with just a little bit of an advantage in reaction time. Got the whole shot, got the win at the stripe. Ken Langlois, Justin Mosier up next. Justin, 448 dial in on the lane side. Portland, Indiana, Ken Langlois. He's been a winner this year at the Motorplex. Goes red this time, 004 foul, and Justin shakes the tires violently. I mean, like Top Alcohol Dragster kind of shook the tires. 002 right for Justin. Kenny's going to be kicking himself. He went red by 4 thou, and then Mosier shook the tires on that run. He was out of throttle at 647 at a 71 mile per hour. Langlois, 511 at 134, letting out of it after the 4,000th foul. Richard Cochin, 476. Kurt Voltman, 488. Mr. Gasket side. Final start for Richard Kirchen by 0.04 of a second. And Kurt Voltman's going to move on. 590 as he was on the throttle. Richard 478, 2 over to 145. Voltman was 10 off the starting line. Brian Horton and Mark Doberstein. Doberstein on the lane side, 553 dial-in. The 71 Dodge out of the Parker camp. And Brian Horton with the 485 dial-in, Mr. Gasket side. For American Race Cars and Walbridge Automotive. Double 06 and 011. Doberstein, 553, is dead on 8 at 125. And the Parker crew goes wild. Both their cars into the next round. 486, 1 over for Horton, 137 mile per hour. Brian was 011 off the mark, 8 thousandths margin of victory. Going to Doberstein. Rob Lutzke and Matt Schaefer. 509 dial-in. Trenton, Illinois racer on the lane side of the racetrack. Lutzke. 535 dial into Mr. Gasket lane. All right, Rob Lutzke looking to redeem a little luck here. 007 light. It's going to run 2 over for the win. 537, 124 mile per hour. Schaefer breaks out by 4 thousandths. And Rob gets the win to move on to round number 2. Here's Ty Rankle. Oh, parachute is just vibrated out on the Rankle dragster. Stop him. There we go. Yep, we got him stopped before the parachute gets tangled up underneath the car.
You hear me, Jason? This side goes. It's not ours. They don't have time to pack a parachute.
And it appears as though Roy Blair is going to get a single here. He burns out on the lane side, and he is going to move on to round number 2 unopposed. It's the Rankle crew has to retrieve the chute there before Ty backed up from his burnout and got tangled underneath the car and damaged that precious fabric. Roy's off the mark. Well, 36 light, but he'll be excused because he's got a driver sitting over there with a parachute in the cockpit of the car. Couldn't let him run at that point, although it would have been kind of cool to see the driver make the pass and then throw the parachute out from the cockpit. I've never seen that one before. Ty will back her up and has a little bit of bad luck here in the first round. Then buybacks available in the office, Bob Nutella. Pit side of the racetrack, $75 for $5,000 today. Tim Owen, Doug Katina being our next player. Actually, Eric Anderson, this is his entry. There we go. Eric Anderson. 493 dial-in, Eau Wisconsin. Taking on the Indiana racer, Tim Irwin, one of the Mosier Engineering cars. Double 09, 011. One light on Mr. Gasket's side, Anderson. 502 after a 009 reaction time. Goes 121. Tim Irwin, 1,300ths over. 5:03 goes 142. Losing it all down low. Mark Kelly. And Ray Conley from Elyria, Ohio. 458 dial in on the lane side. Kelly, 484 to Mr. Gasket Lane. Final start, Ray Conley turns it red by 14 thousandths of a second. Kelly was 018 green. He runs dead on 2 with a 484 run to move on to the second round, 142 mile an hour. Conley won off 459 at 152 after that foul start. Lucas Fisher and Tad Reese. Another Ohioan over here on the lane side, dial 508. Lucas Fisher, Spring Arbor, Michigan. Quick silver car, dial 533. .026 and a 003 right. Double breakout win for Fisher. He's under by 1,000th with a 5:32.9 run at 1:26. Tad Reese under by 2,000ths. That's farther under. 5:07 with an 8, 1:34. And Lucas Fisher moves on to the second round. Joe Hassling. Driving the McCormick Motorsports Dragster in this pair. 491 dial in. Wendell Barger Jr., Fort Wright, Kentucky, the Bluegrass State, dial 517 on the lane side. Man running over there. Oh, big time water. Looks like the tires are pretty moist there. And he gets the win light, 490. 191 dial and a double breakout. He was 21 on a tree. 476 dial in for Bear. Jerry Lee over here on the lane side, 484 dial in. Both drivers staging very carefully. And they're off. 8 thousandths apart here on their RTs. Win light on Chris Bowes. He's dead on 8 with a 476 run. 145 mile an hour. Jerry Lee, 483 with a 3. Breaking out by 7 thousandths. He goes 142. Ken Zeller, Smithfield, Missouri. That Boss chassis car with a small block Chevy. Campaigning his big block car here earlier in the weekend. Couldn't get the mojo going on that, so we got the small block dragster out. Reeled it back in from the 450s down into the 490s, performance-wise. Dave Foster and Herman over there in the Mr. Gasket Lane, dial 527. Only 5 foul apart in reaction times. Foster takes the finish line. Genzo takes the finish line, gets to win a double breakout. 489.6, 138. Foster 526, under by 7 thousandths. Kirby McLennan, Bob Drews. 473 for McLennan. Mr. Gasket side. Bob Drews, St. John's, Michigan. The south end of town. 491 on the lane side. Has the better start, but not by much. McLennan right there. Bob's going to get the win. 491 dead on 2 at 138. After a 007 reaction time. Kirby McClellan 3 over, 476. He goes 142. All right, Bob Payton, Fowlerville, Michigan. Quick whack of the throttle and cleans her out. Quick purge of the nitrous, and Bob rolls up to the starting line on the lane side. Face off with Jim Hamilton, Fraser, Michigan. 501 dial in. Payton's going to go with a 479 here in round number 1 of our 5K to win. Cleanup race, Sunday, World Super Pro Challenge weekend. 0.005 of a second advantage in reaction time. Wind light on here, Bob Payton, 480, 142 mile per hour. He's 1 over. Hamilton, 502 to 6. He's 1 over, 136. 15 thousandths margin of victory there. Wind light on Bob Payton on the lane side. Jim Johnson joining us for the first time this weekend. For Muscle Motors. Tony Sacco's Pizza. 506 dial into Mr. Gasket Lane. And Bob and Clark on the lane side, Clinton Township, Michigan, dial 504. They're 200ths a second part. JJ is going to get the chance to lead first. Clark with a little better start. Wind light on Bob Clark, 1 over the 0. 5050 at 133. He was 006 off the starting line at 5 thousandths of a second advantage there. JJ breaks out by 7 thousandths with a 505 with a 3 at 135. Tom Dauber to Mr. Gasket Lane, Jackson, New Jersey. And Bug McCarty on the lane side.
Or is that? That's not.
Hazelhurst, Georgia. Bug's going to get the win here as Dauber turns it red by 8 thousandths. 487, 142. He was 18 green off the mark. 1 over the 0. Dauber, 008 foul. Under back here and under down there. 5057. That's 13 thousandths breakout. 135 mile per hour for the New Jersey racer. And a reminder again, buybacks available. Bottom of the tower, pit side, $75. Gets you back in for $5,000 race. First or second round. Mark Horton, Millbury, Ohio, the Mosier team. Local racer Scott Hornline, 489. Only 2 foul apart. 493, 478. Horton 4 over gets the win. 134 mile per hour at 4 thousandths finish line. Scott 4 over as well. 134 mile an hour apiece actually. They were 027 and 029. Both drivers went off the number. Hornline had a little better start. Megan Carnes. Mr. Gasket Lane with the Cavalier. 602 dial in to take on the dragster. Todd Baddock, Adrian, Michigan. 488 dial in on the lane side. Three thousandths. Two good green lights. Megan gets the win. She is dead on. 602 to 1. 116 for 5 thousandths margin of victory there. Baddock dead on 9. 488 at 140. And Troy Coughlin Jr. and Howard Schulter come up next. The Ellis Manufacturing car. That's the belt grinder guy. Anybody puts together a perfect run. Howard's got a piece of a machine shop equipment. It'd be very cool to have. 478 dial on lane side for the Wisconsin racer, Troy Coughlin Jr. Coughlin Brothers Racing. In the Jegs camp, 484 dial in. Oh, Troy Jr. missed the trail a little bit. Shelter with a better start. He's going to get it done at the stripe. 479, 143, or 2,000s. 479, 143, 483, 6. Breaking out by 4,000s. Troy Coughlin Jr. at 146. So Howard moves on. And Troy Jr. will be looking for the buyback window. Which happens to be in the office, bottom of the tower, pit side, $75. Stay in the game for $5,000. Karsten Bloom. KB Carburetors on the lane side. Maumee, Ohio, there just outside of Toledo. And Mike Simons, Nashville, Michigan. 496 dial in. Fall start, Karsten Bloom goes red by 6,000ths of a second. Simons 010 green, 497.8, 137. Karsten goes red, and he's over the dial in by 300ths of a second, 531 and 127. John Rankel, Chris Wallen come up next. Rankel and Mr. Allen and Chris Wallen on the lane side with a 521. Spencer Wallen and John missed the tree a bit. Still going to get it done at the stripe. 505's dead on zero. 133 mile per hour. Wallen breaks out by 2,000ths of a second with a 520 run at 128. As he was holding three, they went past the Christmas tree. An 011 light gets down there first by 31 thousandths, and that was too much. Rankel moves on. And Andy Walcott, Steve Mikas come up to the starting line. Walcott to Mr. Gaskett's side, Gaylord, Michigan. 529 dial in. Steve Mikas, retired GM at Pro E, now living a dream. Lucas Oil Drag Racing season, two-time defending Super Comp champ, Division 3's 003 in reaction time here. Andy Walcott gets the win in a double breakout. Andy was 12 off the mark. He was right there. 527 with a 3. 17th thou under, 128 mile per hour. Steve, 519 with a 7. Is under by 23 thousandths. 131 mile per hour. Bill Riddle and Jenny Zednick. Riddle in the Mr. Gasket lane, 482 dial in. The Holloway Company with Malice Cooper and Elfino and those cool rock bands that they had down there entertaining us. Motorplex Pavilion last night. Pyrotechnic show was great afterwards. I haven't seen anything like that since a KISS concert I went to when I was in high school. You know, it's funny because, now I'm rambling again. 490 dial on Jenny Zednick in the lane side. Be Bill's opponent here. 006 fire, Bill Riddle. Jenny, 006 green. 489 1, 141. 9,000. That's the quickest I can recall the Zednick car going. Must like that crisp, cool air out there. 480 for Bill Riddle. He breaks out as well, goes 144. Bruce Carroll in Austin St. Dennis. Minnesota racer over there to Mr. Gasket Lane, 483 dial-in. In Austin St. Dennis, 513, 3/10 of a second even in handicap here. Racing from the lane side. Double 06 and 016, advantage to Carl. 485's 2 over 135 mile per hour. It's a 16/10,000ths. Margin of victory. Austin had a little better number on the racetrack, 5:14.1. But Carl had a slightly better reaction time by 100th of a second with 2 good lights. Got the whole shot, got the win there. Bobby Johns, Tony Leonard, Mr. Gasket side. And Tony Leonard from Minnesota on the lane side with a 485 dial in. Johns a 10th of a second back with a 495. Leonard, Johns, 2 foul apart, win light on. Bobby Johns, 496. 1 over at 128. Tony Leonard breaks out by 14 thousandths, 483.6 at 139. Wendell Barger Sr. and Amy Kirchen up next. Barger to Mr. Gasket lane. 502 dial in and Amy Kirchen. For Todd Zars, Todd's Extreme Paint. Kirchen Motorsports team. Saw Richard earlier. This is his wife Amy. She's on the lane side. She's dialed 503, 100th apart in their dial-ins. Amy will be leaving first. But not by much. Amy adds 100th to that handicap. She's going to get the win. 505, 135 mile per hour. It's a 7,000ths margin of victory in that pair. Barger's 504. It's 2 off as well at 131. Amy was 016 and Wendell's 026. Helped her get the job done at the finish line. Jacob Elrod, David Lanning. Elrod from Herod, Ohio, Sunoco Race Fuels, that famous Elrod racing family. Put together a bunch of championships in the IHRA Trail in the 80s and the 90s. There's Jacobs up here to Mr. Gasket lane, dial 464. David Lanning, Bronson, Michigan. Out the southern part of the state, close to the Indiana border. He's on the lane side, 513 dial in for that Diamond Race Cars chassis. 2-time winner here at the Motorplex this year. Landing with a little better right. Win light on. Jacob Elrod, 464 is dead on 247 mile per hour. Landing goes 511 at 140. Breaking out by 29 thousandths. 19 thousandths. Jeff Hora. He'll be over in the Mr. Gasket lane. Collins, Ohio, 479 dial in. Terry Bowman. Bertrand, Michigan with the Chevy 2, 652 dial in. She was our early season points leader. Here in local competition at the Motorplex. Reaction time's the same as they were in the previous pair, 016, 026. This time here out into Mr. Gasket lane. He's going to get the win. 479 and 144 after a 26 light. Terry was 100th of a second quicker at 016. 651 with a 1. It's under by 9,000. She goes 105 mile per hour. Breaks out. And Hura moves on. Matt Hewitt and Jason Folk come up next. Attention to the pits. We need silver dragsters. Silver dragsters should be in the staging lanes. Silver dragsters should be in the staging lanes as we keep working our way through round number 1 of the $5,000 to win cleanup race. Jason Folk, Matt Hewitt up next. 494, 491, win light on Mr. Gasket's side of the racetrack. 494, 138, dead on after a 001 late. Jason Falk was 006. Whole pile of crap came out of the back of the car. It was on the lane side. Looked like leaves or something. Wherever it was easily blown off in the racing service. And Jeff Ledford and Joshua Morgan come up. Double 06 foul for Jeff Ledford. 475.8. Josh Morgan goes 144 mile per hour. 486 for JL with a 1 at 141. Good numbers on the racetrack, but turned it red by 6 thousandths of a second. Chuck Scrubshirt and Gary Williams. Williams and Chuck Scrubshirt and Gary. It's 009 off the mark. 50K winner's going to get another win light here. 527 at 110. Chuck goes 585 at 117. And Troy Fields. Mr. Gasket's side, 495, dial in, heads up with Joe Bowman. Joe's on the lane side, the all-black machine. Good start for both drivers. 007 and 016. Joe Bowman's going to get the win. 495 and 137. 009 finish line. Troy's won over at 496 at 139 in a good drag race. Richard Briscoe, John Labash Jr., 481 and 485 the dial-ins. Briscoe from Oakley, Illinois, dialed 481. And John Labash Jr., 484 dial in, 300ths of a second apart. Double 09 and 012. Another good one here, win light on. Richard Briscoe, dead on zero, 142 mile per hour. There's a 12 thousandths margin of victory there. John Labash, 485 at 134. Dan Davies, Brian Falk will be in the next pair. 460 dial in for Davies. Brian Falk, 479. Again, final call. Dragsters should be in the staging lanes for round number one. All dragsters, all cars should be in the staging lanes for round one. Foul start here for Brian Falk as he goes red by 4 thousandths of a second. 18 light Dan Davies. Both of them run under the number. 459.3 on a 60 dial in for Dan. 156. Brian Falk, 478. He was 4 thou under. And turned it red by 4 thousandths of a second back here at the tree. Bill Prest, Dean Carnes come up next. This goes on to Mr. Gasket Lane, 452 dial in. Supercharged car from Ohio. Pressed out of Freedom, Pennsylvania. He's on the lane side. 495 is his dial in. .010 and .012 off the starting line. Barnes and Prest. Wind light on for Dean. 452. He's dead on. With a 0. 159 mile per hour. 007 finish line in that pair. 495. Prest dead on as well. With a 5. And 139. It's a 17 thousandths finish line there for Prest. Or 17 thousandths package. Not enough to get it done. J.P. Schuster and Ryan Pinkelman be our next pair. J.P. rolled out of the water box and didn't get much of a burnout. Rolls back in the water box and some kind of quick adjustment there. Pinkelman's going to get a single here as J.P. Schuster unable to execute a burnout apparently. 506 dead on 2. Pinkelman with a 16 thousandths package on the single there. Schuster's unable to answer the bell. In 014 line, he goes 134 mile per hour. J.P. backs it underneath the tower. Bill Swain and Ricky Atkins. Bill Swain to Mr. Gasket Lane, 46 dial in. Ricky Adkins, 528 on the lane side. Former winner of the 50K. Billy's our points leader during our regular bracket competition. 486, Mr. Gasket side, 528 for Adkins. Foul start for Billy as he goes red by 4 thousandths of a second. Adkins 006, 525, he's under. The 28 dial in goes 130 mile per hour. Billy goes dead on 0, 486, with an O at 141. Turned on the red light by 4 thou, and Ricky Atkins will move on to round number 2. Steve Taylor, Scott Taylor rather this time. Portage, Michigan, 497 dial in. Nick Folk, 470. The Illinois racer. With the Huntsville Engines house car, our event sponsor. Lights a pair, 2 thou apart. 473 with a 7. Nick Folk goes 132. 496. Scott Taylor, he's 3 thou under, 136 mile per hour. Nick Folk moving on to the second round. Attention in the pit area. Attention in the pits. Blue and red door cars. Blue and red door cars. We need you drivers to the staging lanes. Blue and red door cars. Need you drivers to the staging lanes for round number 1. .459, Mr. Gasket side. .012 light John Parks. 458, 150 mile per hour. 495 Mike Brookfield. And 139. Mike Zednick, Dwayne Blair. 498 for Dwayne. He's 2 over after a 22 light. 129 mile per hour. Mike goes 486 on the 82 dial and 4 off at 141. Triple zero right, 007. Doug Catino, Will Crawford, win light on for Will, 483, runs 484, 143 mile per hour, the 007 reaction time. Catino was trip zip perfect. Gets down there first by 26 down, breaks out by 8, 492. With a 2 at 135 on the 93 dial-in for the Minnesota driver. Eric Anderson. Back up here again to the different entry. 497 dial-in, Steve McCrory. Same with Steve. 528 dial-in lane side for the Georgia runner. Foul start for Eric as he goes red by 1,000. McCrory, 005. 529, 128 mile per hour. 496, 3 at 138 for Anderson. Bob Koski, Ron Lakeys. 527 dial-in on the lane side. Koski, 509. Mr. Gasket lane for the Texas runner. Oh, Ron was late up the mark. Must have got his coffee out of the decaf pot this morning. 513, Bob Koski. A few times this round, a 40 light, or worse, is going to get a W. 130 mile per hour. Ron goes 530 at 128. Again, door cars. First 2 cars, blue and red. We need your drivers to the staging lanes for round number 1. Door cars. Make it blue and red. Need you up here. Neither driver moving up to find a pre-stage beam yet. It's Travis Colangelo and his opposition here, Randy Shore Jr. The Bear Motorsports car parked. Randy last to stage. Travis Colangelo, 478 and 484. Trav leaving first. Sure, a little better right. 479, 1 over at 141 mile per hour. Sure with the win. Travis got there first by 6 thousandths of a second. Problem is, it was 7 thousandths too much. Couldn't win with that reaction time. So 21, Randy was 007 off the mark. Jeremy McCormick, Fountain, Michigan. Lane side of the 493. And the Taylor and Voltman car, I believe Kirk Voltman at the wheel. 492 dial in. And they're nearly heads up. And Jeremy getting a 100th of a second handicap. Doesn't matter, Voltman fouls out by 1,000. 490 with an 8, 140 mile per hour for Jeremy McCormick. Voltman 3 off, 495. He goes 140. Also, Skylar Drews, Mr. Gasket side, St. John's, Michigan. He and his dad Bob taking turns here with the family rail for Drews Motorsports. and Sean Parker. Head manager down to the big car dealership in the Kalamazoo area. 507 dial-in for Sean. That racecraft chassis dragster. He'll be on the lane side. The wind really starting to pick up here. 001 light. Parker has got the edge. And the win, 509. He's 2 over at 131. 21 thousandths margin of victory. Skylar 3 off, goes 489.0, 134. After an 014 reaction time. Chuck Mink. Richmond, Indiana. Down to 765 area code. And Kelly Smith in the Mr. Gasket lane. 524 dial in. Oh, 17, 478's 1 over for the win. Mink, 141 mile per hour. Kelly breaks out, 522. On the 24 dial in, 131 mile per hour. MPH's John Bastard, Bill Riddle, the Holloway gang. I don't see Malice out there in the starting wagon anywhere. He's still recovering from the party last night on the stage. Did I tell you the pyrotechnics show was awesome, Mike? I'm assuming you didn't get to catch that. Nada. I mean, it was like a great weight concert. I mean, there was stuff going off and lights, and it was homemade, but it was cool. Special thanks to the Holloway Company for all kinds of fun last night. Bill Riddle, the Holloway Group, 482. John Pasture from Minnesota, 481. John missed the tree. He was a little late. Must have got his coffee out of the same pot that Ron LeKeys did. He was tardy. 484 at 136. He had a 481 at 140, even though he was dead on. John Pasture got tattooed a bit. Riddle and the Holloway gang moving on to round number 2. Buybacks again available in the office, bottom of the tower. Pit side of the racetrack. $75 to get you back in for $5K. And Rod Schaefer, Trenton, Illinois. And Todd Zeller on the lane side. Oh, 11, 028. 455 Zeller, 149 mile per hour. Schaefer runs 491. He's 2 off at 139. Here's Bill Smith. And Gary Williams, 512 dial in on the lane side. Bill's going to dial 504. All right, Gary in his other entry here. 50K win. Somebody needs to give him a breath analyzer. Bill Smith. Foul start for BS as he goes red by 16 thousandths. Williams, 505, 136 mile per hour. BS gets his performance back that he lost this morning. 499 at 135. Troy Williams Jr. back up. The car that Gary put in the winner's circle. Brother Gary in the winner's circle of that overkill car. Here an hour or so ago. 507 dialing on the lane side. Kirk Cheney, king of the track 2012 here at Mid Michigan. 497 dial in a tenth apart. Final start this time for Cheney as he goes red by 9 thou. 003, Troy Williams Jr., 5'10", 126, 497, and 138. Jeff Ledford, Chad Baddock, next pair, 499, 494. $410 and R11. 494 with a 0. Baddock dead on after an 11 late. 11 thousandths package. Jeff breaks out by 11 thousandths of a second with a 497.9 at 133. Jeff was 10 green. And problems on the starting line here for Ty Rankle. Well, it was the same entry with a parachute flew out on the starting line. Now the other driver, apparently the car won't back up. Spooky. There you go. That could beat some demons out of that thing. Apparently, I'm assuming that he has got no trans brake at this point. John Labash Jr. He's a savvy racer. He's probably privy to everything that's going on over there. 488 dial in for John Jr. lane side. Ty Rankle, Mr. Gasket lane, 507. Oh, and yeah, he didn't even, he set the trans brake. He had good intentions. It rolls off the starting line here as soon as he let go of it. 486, John Labash Jr. goes 141 mile per hour. First time that he's broke the 140 mile an hour bracket, 140 mile an hour barrier. Because normally he's parked down there during eliminations before the stripe. Ricky Adkins, Jeff Strickland. It's crazy out there, Mike. No, the Rankle car definitely has some issues. It's not happy. Jeff Strickland, 486 dial in on the lane side, runner up in the 50K today. And Ricky Adkins, two past $50,000 champions, 497 dial in, Mr. Gasket side. Strickland, 486 lane side. 008, 004, Adkins with the advantage. 498's one over the 0, 133 mile per hour. 003 finish line, Strickland, 486 at 136 mile per hour. All right, door cars coming up. It's Jim Rankle and Brian Falk now are on the starting line. 623, 507. Anyone that hasn't run number one yet. Need to be in the staging lanes because we're into the door cars now. 001, 004, when light on, Brian Falk, 509 for the 67 Camaro Roadster. 130 mile per hour. And a 622 there for Rankle. After a 001 reaction time. 69 Mopar breaks out by 1,000, goes 109 mile per hour at the stripe, and Mike Nitchie and Bob Hamilton come up next. 72 Nova from Clinton Township, dialed 638, and Mikey on the lane side of the 562. Oh, not sure what happened to Hamilton, but as long as Mikey doesn't make a mistake in the stripe, he's got this one well in hand. 568, 109. Neach moves on. Hamilton limped off the starting line. He had a reaction time that started with a 3, but he had bigger issues. He coasts the Nova on down through the 8th mile with a 13-second run at 41 mile per hour. And Mike Toon, Johnny Simeone come up next. Johnny Simeone, 007 late for the Canadian driver. He goes 592, 115, 658 for 2, 1 over at 102. That is a 0.004 ten-thousandths of a second MOV. Simeone moves on. And Mike Toon, buybacks, buddy, $75, $5,000 to win today. Buybacks available in the office, bottom of the tower. Pit side. Fred Schwade, Matt Cornell. 571, 647. Fast start. Fred Schwade goes red by 34 thousandths of a second. Cornell's 020. 570 with a Ford, 119, under by 6 thousandths of a second. Fred, 643 on the 47 dial-in. Got good air conditions out there, but the wind is a little bit of a nuisance. Watching a couple of flags I see out there in the pit area. Got some big-time wind. You can almost hear it blustering up here in the tower. Well, kind of. It's like somebody's playing the Lawrence of Arabia album out there. And Joe Schmall. Doesn't have the best aero package in the pit area, that 69 Fury. 696 dial-in, Bill Yarchuk. I'd assume that Beretta would get through the air a little bit better. Oh, Schmall. He makes up for it, and Yarchuk is in trouble. 690 Smicks. Schmall runs dead on after I was just picking on the aero package on that 69 Fury. Shame on me. Dead on 2. Yarchuk dead on 0. Schmall is 000 off the starting line. Bill missed it a bit. Another decaf guy. No question about it. 69 Sport Fury. Trip zip dead on 2 with a violent headwind. Schmall boys know how to race. They can get it done up there in Minnesota. They're not just all about fishing and beer. And this fella here on Mr. Gasket's side, he does all right for himself, too. Big number 1 on the window for son Brandon. We just saw Dad move on. Jim Simmons going to try to stop him, and Brandon stops himself. 007 foul for the 70 Challenger. Simmons, 554. Dial, and he runs 551.9 on the run. 129 mile per hour after an 010 light. Brandon, 627 and 108. Didn't have it dialed quite as right as his dad did. Chad 6, lane side. Tony Leonard, Mr. Gasket lane with that big Mopar. 618 dial-in. Chad 6 is going to go with a 09. The cars ran like 3 straight 610s since scrubbing the wall yesterday. I don't know if an 09 is a good plan here in this headwind. It ain't going to matter. Leonard just fouls out. Chad's got the win. 609. And it runs another 610. 109 mile per hour for the 6 Roadster. And Chad will be in round number 2 of the 5K race. He's our defending winner from 1 year ago of that event. 619, Tony Leonard with the Mopar. After a 005 foul start, he was going 110 mile per hour in the 8th. Andy Schmall. 649 dial in for the Little Vega. And Larry Murray, 619 on the lane side for the Mustang Roadster. 0.3 of a second difference in their dial-ins. So Schmall is 1-1 here so far this morning. Dad moving on. Brandon fouls out. And he's off to a good start. He's got 16 thousandths extra to work with. He's going to get the win. Dead on 1. 649. 101 mile per hour after a 007. Foul start there for Larry Murray. 618. And 113 for the Mustang. Jess Kearns. 626 dial in for Jess and the 67 Nova from Milan, Michigan. Kearns Motorsports, Team Mallard. Mark Hancock, Boyne City, Michigan. 671 dial ins off the mark. Hancock with a better lead. Jess misses the tree. Mark's 023, he's got the win. 672 and 101. Jess with a 631 and 108. Next pair, Tim Hyges, lane side. That 95 Beretta from Traverse City, Michigan. Up there in Cherry Country. With all the Petoskey stones along the lake shore. 550 dial in. And Jeff Wistinghauser the second. 76 Vega from Bellevue. Dial 584, Hygis. 550 dial in. Be leaving last. Final start, Jeff Wistinghausen goes red by 9 thousandths of a second. Hygis 022. 551's one over 125. And Jeff Wistinghauser, even with that headwind, makes a great run for that car. 580's as quick as I can remember Jeff in the spring. 120 mile per hour, and since they got that Heim fixed yesterday, that car's like straight and true and right around the low 580s, making good runs. It was a bit of a handful. And Scott Hornline, Mark Dobrestein come up next. 626 for Scott. High Precision Plymouth. He and his dad, Bob. Daryl Pollock did some driving duties with this car yesterday. This Astro Performance Camaro was broke, and Mark Dobrestein, the Demon, splitting up driving chores with Sean Parker. Laid off the mark here. Better Light went to Hornline. He gets the win. 628, 2 over. 106 mile per hour. Takes a 4 thousandths margin of victory, tightening up there a bit. Dobrestein's dead on, 552.7. At 125, but he had a 40 late. And that wasn't enough to get it done. Greg Collins, Jeff Burtis. Collins in the Mr. Gasket lane, 599 dial in. Burtis, Jeff and Larry, and the family there to Saginaw with the Malibu wagon. 631 dial in on the lane side. Jeff's away, and there goes Collins. 15th hour partner reaction time. The wind light on for Collins, 599. 115 mile per hour as Greg moves on. Jeff Burtis, 628. Even with a headwind, that's as quick as I can recall Jeff going. 628, 108 mile per hour. 28. Joe Hessling, Jerry Chambers. First time we've seen Jerry up here this year. Comes up and races with us a time or two a year with that dragster they normally campaigns. Now at the wheel of this 93 Chevy Blazer, I believe. That's Ron Lakee's Blazer. Old Blazer, Jerry's the owner. 680 dial in. Joe Hessling, 605 with the Kearns Motorsports Cavalier. Saw Megan get the win earlier, and Joe's going to do the same. 611, 101 as the Mallard crew goes wild. Joe had a better start by 15 thousandths. Chambers runs 8 off the number. 688 at 99. And Larry Zion, 595 dial in. Getting set to take on Dave Ziegler, 728. Lawrenceburg, Indiana, Chevelle. Double 003, 014. Zion's going to get the win. 595, dead on 5, 115 mile per hour. Ziggy goes 727. He's under by 5 thousandths of a second after a 003 reaction time. Kelly Smith and John Linneberry. How about this? Heads up between the Camaro and the 2017. You're going to get a real clear picture as to who's controlling the race at the flash of that bottom amber, as they're going to be firing at the same time. A better start going to Kelly Smith. Dead on 1, 583 at 118 mile per hour. John's 400 at 582. With a 6 at 115 for the Camaro. And Joe Bowman and Andrew DiPiazza come up next. All right, attention to the pits. We need round number 2 of blue and red dragsters. Blue and red run stickers for the diggers. Need your drivers back to 7 and 8. Blue and red run stickers for the dragsters back to 7 and 8. DiPiazza, 541 dial in on the lane side. Joe Bowman, 558. Mr. Gasket lane with the vet. 5:41, Andrew DiPiazza's dead on after a 10 light. Joe was a little tardy off the mark. He had a 50 light. He runs 5:56. 13th thou under, 121 mile per hour. And Jason Jensen. Comes up on the lane side with a 65 Malibu. 6:15 dial in, 6:05. With Bud McCarty's wheel standing Camaro right alongside of Jensen's Malibu. Double O's apiece. Double breakout win for Bug. 6:04. 6th thou under. 107 mile per hour. Jason. Big time breakout. 6:10 and 109. He was trying to kill some with that speed. Took 37 thousandths. Too much finish line. Ed Hall, Vicksburg, Michigan. Larry Zion's S10 pickup on the lane side. Scotty Baddock, 699 dial in, Mr. Gasket lane. Red light start at home by 6 thousandths. He follows up, Baddock runs 696 under the dial in, 97 mile per hour win for the Mustang. Ed Hall, after a 6 thousandths red light, runs dead on with a 658 one run at 102. Eric Johnson, Northern Michigan racer, lane side of the 6:15 dial-in. And Ben Robbins, Big Ben Parliament, 6:29, Mr. Gasket lane. Foul start for Ben Robbins, 25 thousandths. He red lights. Eric Johnson was minus 007, but with the opportunity to go first, Ben turned on the red bulb before Eric cut her loose. 6:14 under the 15 dial-in, but Eric's going to get a time ticket with a great big W when he gets around the corner. 112 mile per hour the speed. Ben, after the foul start, also breaks out 6:26 at 108. Mom said there'd be days like this. Jim Hamilton, Joe LeCompte. 6:37. Mr. Gasket side, 72 Nova. LeCompte to that Camaro, 6:46 on the lane side. Foul start for Joe LeCompte as he goes red by 7 thousandths. Hamilton missed the tree, but he's got a win light. 6:36. 107 mile per hour for the 72 Chevy. LeCompte, 6:51 at 109. Dragsters, blue and red, back to the staging lanes for round number 2. Blue and red dragsters. Back to the staging lanes for round number 2. Mike Marcette, Mr. Gasket Lane, Bay City, Michigan. We're freewheeling up here. Alan Hodder, 6:51 on the lane side. For Alan Camaro, firefighter from Bay City, Michigan. Taking on Marcette, a fellow Bay City resident. Foul start, Alan Hodder goes red by 24 thousandths of a second. Marcette 020 green, 562 for the Marcette gang, 122 mile per hour. 6:55 and 106 for Hodder. Missed it on both ends a little bit. Will Crawford, Chris Gawitty. Right, Crawford, 67 Camaro. Across the center line there in that second time, or our only time trial here this morning. Apparently whatever issues were stymieing the Camaro, they got it resolved. He's back out on the starting line. Dialed 629, Mr. Gasket's side. Chris Gawitty, quickest door car on the grounds. Real deal top sportsman car. He was the driver of the year in the IHRA. Sportsman driver of the year. And apparently the Firebird has lost fire here. 177 dial-in. He's from Spring, Texas. All right, Chris has to get her cleaned out there. So far. Galletti doesn't hold Crawford up any longer. He rolls in, puts on both pairs of bulbs. Rolls away. There goes Galletti. And even after all that, Chris has a little better right. 015, 018, Crawford's going to get the win. 633. 106 mile per hour for a 100th of a second margin of victory. 482, Galletti's 5 off at 147 mile per hour. And John Nagy, from that famous racing town of Elyria, Ohio, Mr. Gasket side of that 78 Camaro. Taking on Rochester, New York's Mark Talmadge, the wheel standing Vega, 608 on the lane side. 668, John Nagy into Mr. Gasket lane. Foul start here for Talmadge. Huge wheel stand. And he makes his quickest run of the weekend. I tell you, that Vega, if it did not have wheelie bars, he'd flip that thing over, Byron style. 664, 101. Nagy, 400s breakout, got the win there. Talmadge was led by a thou. But all eyes were on that big wheel stand. He put him up, oh gosh, higher than he has all weekend, or at least carried it out further and actually runs his quickest number. Tom Whitaker, Tony Eccles off the mark. Whitaker in the Camaro trying to chase down the winner of our Door-Car Gamblers race from the other night. Double breakout win for Whitaker. Zone 22 runs 5:42 with a 9 at 127. Eccles was 006, actually a little better at the tree. 7-11 and on the 14 dial in. And Chad Branham sitting on the bye run. He's going to get to use it. 480 dial in lane side. Branham moving on unopposed to round number 2 here at our $5,000 wood cleanup race. Chad's 009 here. On this warm up for the next round. 479, 5 foul under the dial in, but that's okay. 145 mile per hour. And we'll see Chad back in round number 2. Todd Race and Chris Barr. There into Mr. Gasket lane, 476 dial in. Tad Reese on the lane side in the 509 dial. First pull round number 2 here. $5,000 to win cleanup race. Again, buybacks available in the office, bottom of the tower pit side for $75. Yeah, thanks for pointing that out, kid. Getting tongue-tied. Chris Benner, Ted Reese. 508 dial on the lane side for Reese. Canal Fulton, Ohio. And Chad Bear, Chris Bear, rather. That was deliberate. I meant to do that. That was deliberate as this staging procedure is. Both drivers off pace and reaction time. Tad Rise is going to get the win. 508 at 133. Takes a 6,000th margin of victory. 476. Chris Baird, 146 mile per hour. And Mike Broomfield, the Indiana racer. Lane side of the 470 dial in. Brian Horton. 484 dial in. For the American Race Cars driver. Wallbridge, Ohio. Roy Broomfield and Brian Horton. Good pair of double O lights here. Horton and Broomfield at the stripe. Brian's going to get it done. 486, 2 over. That's safe. 141 mile per hour takes a 12 thousandths margin of victory. Broomfield 4 off in the Mink car. 474 on the 70 dial in. Mark Kelly. Steve McCrory. Kelly, New Jersey racer over on the East Coast, 484 dial in, and Steve McCrory from the Peach State down in Georgia. 509 dial in lane side. He was the 2010 champ of the 50K. Kelly with a 484 dial in, leaving last. He leaves a little faster. Better light went to McCrory. One light on for Kelly. Dead on 4. Dead on 0. 484, 142 mile per hour. McCrory 508 at 130 miles per hour. Lucas Fisher. And David Davis. Davis from Toledo, Ohio. Lane side. 501 dial in. And Lucas Fisher with a quick silver car. And Mr. Gasket lane dial 532. What's the elliptical? What's an elliptical, Mike? What's the elliptical? Think like gym equipment. Oh, that's like one of them Nordic track things or something, isn't it? There we go. Nothing. I was just daydreaming. 501 dial on David Davis. Lucas Fisher, 532. Another staging battle taking place. At least these two got the top pair of bulbs lit. These pre-stage battles, they really wear you out. Finally, Lucas moves on. He ain't played any games. There's David. Better start with the Davis by 15 thousandths of a second. Stripe, 501, dead on 6, 134. Lucas breaks out, 531 at 128. Rob Lutzke. And Troy Williams, 534, 536. Lutzke, Kent City, Michigan. Two-time winner during local competition here at the Motorplex. And Troy Williams Jr., Bradenton, Florida. He was one of our diaper winners here. Special thanks to J&J Performance. Giving away 5 engine diapers this weekend. Troy's got one. Hey, Mom, look at this. 534, 536, Lutzke and Williams. 2,000-pound reaction times. 536, dead on 0, Rob Lutzke. One of the local drivers moves on. 127 mile per hour, Williams 2 off. Troy goes 536 at 120. 23 thousandths finish line there. Big Sexy gets it done. Justin Mosier. Bob Jennings comes up next. All right, Justin. Rattled the tires big time in the first round. He's back up here with a 448 dial, and he's away and again. Justin, whoa, he's going to stay on it. There was no way he was going to run a 448. As soon as he turned that thing loose and it left the starting line, it shook violently. And I'm not talking like Jeg Super Quick kind of tire shake. I'm talking like Pro Mod, like Top Alcohol Dragster kind of tire shake. He stayed on it, and it looked like a fun ride. It's like sticking your head in a paint shaker at the hardware store. Somebody's going to have to check Justin's fillings after that. Bob Jennings, meanwhile, got the win. 493, 2 off. 128 mile per hour. He was 10 at the tree. And Joe Hessling and Roy Blair come up next. 490 dial in lane side for the Kentucky runner. Joe Hessling and Jeremy McCormick teamed up today. Had some liquid come out. Get on the tires, but I'll tell you, the bite's so good here at the Motorplex, he was unfazed. He's going to get the win here, 490 dial in, Hessling. Let's see what he runs. 491, 139 after Roy Blair turned it 18 thousandths red. 139 mile per hour. 8 under by 15 thou, a little under back here, a little under down there. We've done that before. 142 mile per hour. And Ken Langlois. He's another winner here during the 2012 season at the Motorplex. 505 dial in Mr. Gasket Lane. And Gary Williams, our 50K winner this weekend. No repeat champ. In the 19 years that we've conducted this cool event. 510 dial in lane side. 3 thousandths of a second apart with 2 good green lights. Red light on Ken Langlois. So is the 50K winner. 505, 135 for Kenny. Gary gets down there first by 8 thousandths of a second. He took 3 thou too much. 509.7 on the 10 dial in. Next player, Austin St. Dennis. This young man has put together a couple of wins already since starting his career here back at the beginning of the June. 514 dial in lane side. Well, considering who his dad is, that's not surprising. Roy St. Dennis, previous winner here, great driver. On the sidelines watching his kid. 486 dial in Bill Swain, our points leader here. 3-time winner at Mid Michigan during the 12 season, taking on Austin. Austin with a better light by 17 thousandths. Gets the win with a dead-on 4-run. 514, 129 mile per hour. Billy 487 at 140. Not his day. Austin with a 29 thousandths margin of victory in that pair. And Tom Dauber and Ken Zeller come up next. Dauber into Mr. Gasket's side. 508 dial in. Jackson, New Jersey racer. And Ken Zeller, Smithfield, Missouri, lane side with the 489 dial in. Double 2 to 0-10. Zeller's got the advantage. 488 and a double breakout's got the win. He's under by 8 thousandths of a second, 140 mile per hour. Dauber, 16 thou under at 506 at 126, and the New Jersey runner's out of here. John Rankle and Dalton Samuel will be up next. Ohio versus Florida. Samuel from the Sunshine State. Lane side, 473 dial in. Rankle. Rankle and Reese team, 505 dial in. Mr. Gasket Lane. Start. Dalton Samuel goes right by 9 thousandths of a second. 030 light. John Rankle runs 506. He's went over at 133. And Dalton, through 9 thousandths foul, breaks out 471.7 on the 73 dial and 146. Jeff Hara, Collins, Ohio. And Bob Drew, St. John's, Michigan on the lane side. 10th of a second difference in the handicaps here. It's just going to be spotting Bob a dime, 491. Jeff with a 481 from the Mr. Gasket Lane. And 23, green. Win line on Jeff Hura, 481.7, 141. Bob Drews took the stripe by 3 thousandths of a second. That was a thou too much. 490 with a 9, 140 mile per hour for Bob. And Jeff Hura moving on to round number 3. And Bob Payton, 479 dial in. And he'll be on the lane side in this pair to take on Bradenton, Florida's Bobby Johns. One of the Mosier dragsters racing this weekend. Mr. Gasket's side. 2007 Mullis chassis with a 495 dial. It'll be leaving first. Again, buybacks available in the office bottom of the tower. Pit side, $75 keeps you in it for $5,000 today. Double 01 red, Bob Clayton. Bobby Johns, 013 green, 494 with a 2. 8th thou under. The race was settled back here at the start as Bob lit the cherry by thousandths of a second. 494, 138. Peyton, 479, 144. All right, Kurt Voltman backing up rather quickly. There we go. We got some smoke that time. All right, Voltman trying to do the Buckeye burnout here. Didn't work out so well for him. Tire dried up, dead hook. He had to back up and redo it. Nick Falk, 473 dial in. Voltman, 489. Voltman's going to get the win, 490. 132 mile per hour for 13 green. A little extra heat in the tires and converter helped him out there. 472, breaking out by 8 thousandths of a second. Falk hit 144. Jeff Ludford and Ricky Adkins, 527 dial in from the Bulldog. Mr. Gasket side. And Jeff Ludford. 486 dial in here on the lane side. He was our 2011 track champion in Super Pro. .021, .023. 528, Ricky Adkins, 121 mile per hour. Ricky Atkins moving on. JL breaking out by 11 thousandths of a second. 484.9 and 141 mile per hour. Ray Conley comes up next. Lane side, Elyria, Ohio. 460 dial in. Bill Riddle. And the Holloway Company. .41 dial in, Mr. Gasket side. I'll tell you what, Bill Riddle, Conley was late. I mean, 10th of a second kind of late. 482 for Riddle, one over after a 26 late. At 138 mile per hour, Ray Conley. Whether he flinched or got distracted or got something in his eye or something fogged up or had to move his glove. Anyway, he had a 126 late. Runs 462 and 142 mile an hour. That's very uncharacteristic of a driver of his caliber. Bill Riddle moving on to the next round. Doug Katina. Mark Horton come up next. 491, 474 the dial ends. Horton on the lane side. Co-owner of American Race Cars from Millbury in the Buckeye State. Katina, Lake City, Minnesota. Leaving first. .021, .034. 493, Doug Katina moves on. 2 off after 021 light at the better start. Runs 135 mile an hour in the 8th. 477.7. Mark Horton 3 off at 143. Scott Hornline. Mark Dabrestein. Hornline, Scott and Bob out of Saginaw, Michigan. 490 dial in. And Mark Daberstein in the Parker Dragster. He's on the lane side from just up the street in Edmore, and he is late. Hornline with a better start by 300ths of a second. 491 at 134, 17 thousandths margin of victory. Mark is dead on zero. 5-0, 5-0, 136. But a 58 light ain't going to get it done. Andy Schmall and Jason Falk up next. Minnesota, Florida. 491s apiece. We are heads up in this pair. And for the second round in a row, Jason Falk has what appears to be like steel wool or something falling out of the back of his dragster. See what comes out of the back of the Falk car as he launches. Looks clean so far. He's going to get the win. 1 over, 492. On the 91 dial-in. He was 005 green. Schmall, 011, 491.9. He was dead on. That was a 0.005 ten-thousandths. Margin of victory going to the Falk crew. Matt Hewitt, Mr. Gasket Lane, Milan, Michigan, 494 dial-in. And Jenny Lynn, Jenny Zednick. She'll be over here on the lane side, now living in Walbridge, Ohio. Recent Purdue University graduate. Facing off with Matt Hewitt, Milan, Michigan. Mad Dog Motorsports car. Four thousandths of a second apart, both lights in the teens. Who's going to get it done? 495, 1 over 0, 138 mile per hour. Jenny was 1 over 0, 491 at 136. And it was Hewitt's tiny little hole shot by 4 thousandths of a second. Got the advantage there over the young lady, John Parks. Todd Zeller. Parks into Mr. Gasket Lane in the Fordyce dragster out of Maryland. 458 dial-in, and Todd Zeller. That's the Todd's Extreme Custom Paint guy. 455 dial lane side. 300ths of a second apart. Final call for dragsters. Round at number 2 eliminations. We need silver up there if you're not already there. We need dragsters remaining have not come to the staging lanes for round number 2. Back to the lanes. John Parks is going to get the win with a 2,000ths finish line. 009, Zeller was 005, 459's 1 over at 146. Zeller, 456, was 1 over at 149. So John moves on. And Kirby McClellan and John Labash Jr. come up. And they are a dime apart in their handicap. 474, 484, John Labash. Start, John Labash Jr. Goes right by 4 thousandths of a second. Kirby McClellan 5 off the mark. 475, 1 over. He goes 145 mile per hour. Labash 481 after the red light goes 144. Top speed of the weekend for him. Bruce Carl, Howard Schulter. Minnesota versus Wisconsin. It's like it's college football time out there. 483 dial-in, Bruce Call. He's the Minnesota fella. And Howard Schulter, he's the Ellis Manufacturing guy, still looking to give away that belt grinder in the pits for a perfect run. We got time. 479, 483. 3,000 part reaction time. Howard's going to get the win. 480 is 1 over at 143. 13 thousandths margin of victory in that one. Carl, 485, he won 139. Joe Bowman, Mike Simons. 2 Michigan racers here. Joe in the black car, that's a Worthy chassis over here on the lane side. 494 dial-in. And Mike Simons, one of those Danny Nelson racecraft cars. 497 dial-in, 300ths of a second apart. Better light went to Joe Bowman. He's going to get the win. 494 with a 9. 135 mile per hour. 12 thousandths margin of victory for Joe. Mike Simons had a 41 light. Off pace there a little bit. 497.5, 137 miles per hour in the loss. Joshua Morgan. And Mid Michigan Motorplex. Old Central Michigan Dragway legend Steve Mikas. 521 dial-in. Two-time and defending Lucas Oil Drag Racing Series champion and Super Comp. Doing some bracket racing here this weekend. 521 dial-in lane side for the Rally Dragster. Morgan, 476, and they're off the mark. Two good green lights favoring Joshua Morgan. He's going to get the win, 477, 138 mile per hour, 16 thousandths margin of victory. In a tight race, Steve was dead on 521.5 and 130 miles per hour. Brian Falk, lane side, Durand, Illinois, 479 dial-in. And Megan Kearns. In the Chevrolet Cavalier for Dad Ron. In the Mallard Gang, 601 dial-in. Foul start for Megan as she turns it red by 14 thousandths. Brian Falk, this triple zero perfect. 477 to 145. Megan, after the red light, runs dead on with a 601.5 at 117 in the Cavalier. All right, Andrew Walcott, Gaylord, Michigan. 30-year-old salesman at 527 dial-in. Comes up to the starting line to face off with Sean Parker, lane side, Kalamazoo, Michigan. That's 71 Demon. 554 dial-in on the lane side. .554, Sean Parker. He was 34 off the mark. Runs 125 mile per hour, dead on 4. Andy Walcott misses it by 400s, 531 at 128, even though he was 15 at 34 off the starting line. Had the advantage back here, but couldn't run the number down there. J.P. Schuster, Bob Clark come up next. Bob Clark, 009 light. Somebody was whomping a throttle down there. Clark dead on 7 with a 504 run, 135 mile per hour. J.P. Schuster was 2 off with a 511 run, goes 123. I would have to say it was J.P. Door cars 7 and 8. All right, round 2, door cars. We need you back to 7 and 8. All cars. Door cars back to 7 and 8. Jacob Elrod, Mr. Gasket Lane, 464 dial-in. And Bill Prest, Freedom, Pennsylvania, 495 dial-in on the lane side for the 2 racecraft chassis cars. Well, that's a race tech car, actually, for Jacob Elrod. Sunoco Race Fuels dragster. 015, 019. 495, Bill Prest, 139 mile per hour and a 17 thousandths margin of victory in that one as he's dead on 2. Jacob misses it by 200ths per second. 466, 145. Todd Baddock, Richard Briscoe. Baddock on the lane side, 489 dial-in. Briscoe, 481 for the Oakley, Illinois runner. Wind is blowing like a crazy out there. 014, 022. Briscoe's 2 off, 483. 139 mile per hour is a 4 thousandths margin of victory in that one. 490, Todd Baddock's 1 off, goes 140 mile per hour in that pair. Two Mid Michigan regulars here. It's BS, Bill Smith. Cedar Springs, Michigan, to Mr. Gasket Lane. Face off with Amy Kirchen. .503 dial in for Amy. She's racing from the lane side. Fowlerville, Michigan. Her and Richard. Foul start for Amy. She goes red by a foul. 5 seconds flat with a 0. Bill Smith, 134 mile per hour after a 22 late. Amy, foul under back here. 13 foul under back there. She makes her quickest pass of the weekend on a 5:01.7 run at 136. Chris Wallen, Spencer, Ohio. The A&H collision car. 520 dial in lane side. And Disco Dean Carnes. The window tinner from Fairborn, Ohio. 452 dial in for the blown car. There was a winner here on Thursday. 10K race. .003, .005, 2 foul apart. 520, Chris Wallen. 131 mile per hour, 451.9, Dean Carnes. And 155 mile per hour for the blown car, breaking out by a thou. Chris will move on to the next round with a 12 thousandths package. Chad Baddock, Tim Irwin up next. Irwin, another one of the Moser dragsters, Portland, Indiana. 489 dial in, Chad Baddock. 494. Goes 142. 493, Chad Baddock, breaking out by 5 thousandths of a second. Irwin moves on. He was 007 at the tree. And Will Crawford comes up to take on Randy Shore Jr. I was going to say you might want to set your stopwatch here. Will Crawford and Randy Shore. Be interested to see which one of them stages first. All right, Will is staged. He's ready. 020 to 021 in reaction time. Shorter's going to get the win. 478, he's dead on too. 143 mile per hour. Will Crawford breaks out by 18 thousandths of a second with a 482. 143 mile per hour run. They were 20 and 21 off the mark. Ricky Adkins, Chad Bradham. Bradham on the lane side of the 480 dial in. Ricky Adkins is going to dial 498. .024 and .027 off the mark. 481, Chad Bradham. 139 mile per hour for a 6 thousandths margin of victory in that pair. 499 on the 98 dial in. Ricky Adkins. Skylar Drews, Mr. Gasket Lane, 487 dial-in. He and his dad, Bob. Down there in the starting line, take on Ryan Pinkelman. Maumee, Ohio, lane side, 506 dial-in. 011, 028. Better late went to Pinkelman, but he breaks out. Skylar, 487's dead on zero, 141 mile per hour for the win. 503, 100 by a couple of hun. Ryan Pinkelman had 134 mile per hour. Mike Broomfield. Dwayne Blair. Swamp Branch, Kentucky, 497 dial-in. Mike Broomfield, 496. They're 100th apart. Oh, 14, 021. Win light on, Dwayne Blair, 498. On the 97 dial-in, 131. Mike Brumfield, 494. On the 96 dial, breaking out. Eric Anderson. Into Mr. Gasket Lane. Oh, LB3A is Anderson. Looked over at the monitor, apparently, assuming he either backed out of the beams before he took off and triggered a red light. 5059, Troy Williams Jr. got the win in that one. Troy was 018 green. Runs a couple hundredths under his number, but Anderson turned the red light on before either driver ever put it on the deck. Bob Koski, Jeremy McCormick. Red Oak, Texas. 508 dial-in, McCormick, 493. Double breakout win for Koski, 507-4, 136. 489, Jeremy McCormick, under by 4 hundredths of a second, 137 miles per hour. Steve McCrory and Chuck Mink, leader of the Mink Motorsports team. Lane side of the 477 dial-in, McCrory. Dials 530 from the Mr. Gasket side. Red light start, Chuck Mink, another one by 1,000th of a second. 529 McCrory under that 30 dial-in. He was 20 on the tree. Mink 474, but it didn't matter. As he turned at 1,000th of a second red. Kurt Cheney and Travis Colangelo will be our next pair. Cheney to Mr. Gasket Lane. King of the track for 2012. He and Mike Simons teamed up to campaign this green dragster. 497, Colangelo. Fabricator, chassis builder at American Race Cars down there in Ohio. Lane side, 484 dial-in. Two dragsters off and running. Travis a little better late, and the win. 484 with a 3. 16th thou package, 138 mile per hour. Takes an 18 thousandths margin of victory. Kirk went over at 498. At 137. Dan Davies for Diamond Race Cars, White House, Ohio. 461 dial-in to take on Bill Riddle in the Holloway gang. Provided our musical entertainment last evening, courtesy of Malice Cooper and Elefino. .015, 017 lights. Reynolds dead on to the 2, gets the win. 482 at 140 mile per hour. And Dan Davies breaks out by 18 thousandths of a second with a 459. And Bug McCarty, Gary Williams, 50K winner. Getting set to go. Gary with a 509 dial in on the lane side. And Bug McCarty, Hazelhurst, Georgia with a 488 dial in. Double 02 at 015, 487. Bug McCarty, double breakout winner, under by a thou at 136. Gary Williams breaks out by 7 thousandths of a second with a 508 at 132. Tough racing out there. Sean Parker, Johnny Labash Jr., 488 dial in on the lane side. Parker with a 508, they're 0.2 of a second apart. Throttle at the finish line, Labash. 489, only 128 mile per hour. Sean Parker, 8 up the stripe, runs 506, breaking out by 17 thousandths of a second and 134, even though Sean had a better light, 014 to 021. Nick Folk. And JL's back up. Jeff Ledford from right here in Stanton, Michigan. The Illinois racer, Nick Folk, down 479. Jeff with a 494, Joe Bowman's dragster. Another great part of lights here. O's and teens. Win light on. Nick Folk, 479, 138 for a 7 thousandths margin of victory. JL goes dead on with a 494 with a 4 and 138, but 007 to 013 back at the starting line. Folk with a little bit of an edge there. Got the whole shot, got the win. John Nagy. And the door slammers chassis fab guy, Mike Nitchie. Nagy out of Elyria, Ohio, 664 dial in, 78 Camaro. Nietzsche out of Lansing, 561 dial in for the Chevy Cobalt. Nagy with a much better start. Mikey missed the tree. Nagy's going to get it done, 664, 8, 102. Nietzsche had a 52 light, runs 561, dead on 8 at 127. .019, 018, Fred Slade, Tom Whitaker. 543, dead on 4, Whitaker, 126 mile an hour. Fred was a thou, better in reaction time. 643, breaking out by 100th of a second. Larry Zion from Illinois. Johnny Simeone from Canada. One light on here for Larry. 595 at 114 mile per hour. That's dead on too. Simeone had a 60 light and then breaks out. 589 with a 9 at 116, and that's our first 3 striker of the day. Left last, got their second, broke out. Not good. Jim Hamilton, Tim Hyges. 95 Brett on the lane side, 550 dial in. Jim Hamilton, 636. The 72. Again, final call, all door cars. Should be in the staging lanes. All door cars should be in the staging lanes. Oh, Hyges missed it big time. 39 light for Hamilton, covered him up. Hardcore, 634, 200, 108. Hyges had, well, I don't know how to say it. Missed it. Wasn't feeling it. Not good. 545. Breaks out as well. 2-3 strikers in a row. Let's hope it's not a trend. Chad 6. And Matt Cornell. Pair of good lights here. Double breakout win Cornell. 569 on the 71 dial, and he goes 117. Chad 6, 605. All of a sudden, the Roadster, which has been glued to a 610 for like 4 runs in a row, all of a sudden steps back up to a 605 at 111. That'll throw you for a curve. And Brandon Schmall, Mike Marcette. I couldn't run yesterday before he had his incident. Been like 04, 05. I thought it was a good dial, and he ran 2, 3 10s in a row. What the hell are you supposed to do with that? No. The race car is not happy. Brandon Schmall, 629. Mike Marcette, 561. 16 light, better than the 2 for Marcette. Schmall's going to get the win. The champ moves on. 633 at a 29 dial line. It's Mike Marcette. Had the better light by 18 thousandths of a second. Got down there first by 6 Hun. Covered him up at the finish line a little bit too much. Breaks out by 3 thousandths of a second with the Daytona. Kelly Smith and that wheel standing. Mark Talmadge, 75 Vega on the lane side, dialed 606. Kelly's going to go with a 582 with a 27T. Great launch for both drivers. Kelly Smith gets the win. He was 008 and a double breakout. 581.6. He's under by 4 thousandths of a second. Goes 118. Talmadge, 605 with a 3 on the 06 dial in. 113 mile per hour. And Andy Schmall. Jim Simmons come up next. Jim's on the lane side, a 63 vet, 552 dial in, and Andy Schmall in the Mr. Gasket lane. Dialed 649. Foul start. This time Jim Simmons goes red by 15 thousandths of a second. Small's 000. 646 on the 49 dial in. Goes 105 mile an hour. Simmons 550 at 127. All right, Greg Collins, Dodge Challenger from Wyoming, Minnesota. 6 flat dial in. Chris Galletti, 482 dial in for the quickest door car on the grounds this weekend. Purge of the nitrous, and Galletti Cleans out the Firebird, and he'll roll up to the pre-stage beams. Lydian Collins. Final start, go Liddy, goes red by 12 thousandths of a second. 595, 115. Collins 5 under the number after a 003 light. Galletti, 482 after a couple of 480 runs. It's thrown him for a curveball. It goes 475, unless maybe he was tapping the nitros. 151 mile per hour. Right. Win. Yep. Final absolute call. All run colors. All door cars. If you have not run second round, you need to be there. Brian Falk in the Roadster. Mark Hancock in the Mustang's going to get the win. Hancock, double breakout, 669 winner. 103 mile per hour after a 25 light. Brian Falk was actually a little better with a 007. It was 506 and breaks out by 19 thousandths. 140 mile per hour. Tony Leonard, Bill Yorchuk. 620 dial in, Tony Leonard to Mr. Gasket Lane. Yorchuk's going to go with a 539 on the lane side. Yorchuk with slightly better reaction time. Gambler's winner the other night of the over 50 crowd gets the win, 536. 134 as all these drivers a little all over the place now because of this win. 616, Leonard under big time, 400ths of a second, hit 110 miles per hour. All right, attention to pits, dragsters. We need it. You want home or blue and red? Blue and red dragsters, 2 staging lanes, bring them up here. Blue and red dragsters for lanes 3 and 4. 5 and 6. 5 and 6. Blue and red dragsters, round number 3. Lanes 5 and 6. We're trying to clean the door cars out of 7 and 8. And we need golf. We need golf cart space. Eric Johnson fouled out by 1,000th to that pair. Scott Hornline. 624 at 109 mile per hour. 614. Eric Johnson was dead on 3, but turned it red by a thou. Ouch. Jeff Wilstinghauser, the second, 580 dial in. Ed Hall, 658. 1,000th of a second apart. Near reaction times favoring Jeffrey. He's going to get the win with a dead-on run. 580 for the Vega panel wagon. Ever since they put that busted Heim in, car's been running a number. 119 mile per hour for a 4,000ths margin of victory. Wistinghausen moving on. Ed Hall, he was dead on 5, 658 at 101. Scotty Baddock, Al Hodder, they'll be up next. Baddock into Mr. Gasket Lane with that Mustang, 697 dial in. He'll be leaving first. Al Hodder, 656 on the lane side. Falls out. Scotty Baddock, 1,000th red. Alan Hodder, 020 green. 653, 106 mile per hour. Hodder. Moving on to round at number 3. 698 for Scotty. He goes 97 mile per hour. Here's Larry Murray, 618. On the lane side for that 01 Mustang Roadster, the 460 cubic inch big block Ford. Joe Hustling from Toledo. Into Kearns Motorsports, Chevrolet Cavalier. 603 dial into Mr. Gasket Lane. Levin foul apart in their reaction times. Hessling and Murray. Larry's going to get the win. One over the 619 at 113 mile per hour. 4,000ths margin of victory in that one. Joe was dead on 9 with a 603 at 111. And Joe Ballman and Jerry Chambers come up next. 556 dial in for Joe on the Mr. Gasket side. Jerry Chambers out of Battle Creek with that Chevy Blazer. Formerly campaigned by Ron LeKeys, one of our other competitors here. 687 dial-in on the lane side. Red light, start, Jerry Chambers. Turns the red by 300ths of a second. 555, Joe Bauman, 122. Under his dial by 4th thou, but it doesn't matter, he's got the win. 683 on the 87 dial in Chambers at 100 mile per hour. Bug McCarty, 67 Camaro. 603 dial in. And Andrew DiPiazza, the Gen 4 Camaro from Chicago. 541 dial in on the lane side. .013, .031 off the mark. 603 from McCarty with a 911 mile per hour. DiPiazza, 539, breaking out. And Will Crawford and Joe LeCompte come up next. 67 Camaro from Saline, Michigan. 631 dial in. Ohio and LeCompte, 650 dial on the lane side of that Camaro. .001 and .031. Crawford almost perfect. 631 with a 1. 2 thousandths package. Outstanding. 631-1, dead on 1. Will Crawford, come get you some of that. 105 mile per hour. Joe LeCompte breaking out by 300. 647 at 110. Joe Schmall, Fast and Furious guy. He was on the buy run this round, but he ain't going to get to use it. At least not right now. Mark Dauberstein's going to try to stop him. 553 dial-in for the Parker Group. Schmall, 696. $6 partner action times favoring the Minnesota racer. Couple rips of the throttle and Joe Schmall's win light comes on. 694, 94 mile per hour to double breakout. All right, we're back at it with Stephen McCreary and Chris Baer. Kicking off round number 3 of competition here for a $5,000 cleanup race. .476, 507 to get things kicked off here in round number 3. Baer on the Mr. Gasket side. McCreary, Georgia racer on the lane side. .008, no 13. Baer with a better light. McCreary with a better finish. 507's dead on. With a 3 at 133 mile an hour, 3 thousandths. Margin of victory. Baer 1 over, 477 at 143 out of 3s. Brian Horton, Troy Williams Jr. 486 for Brian and the Mr. Gasket side. For the show chicken farmer from Walbridge, Ohio. I don't write them, I just read them. Troy Williams, Bradenton, Florida, lane side. 536, they're one bulb apart in handicap. double breakout win. Brian Horton, 485, 9th thou under, 142 miles per hour. Troy Williams, 12th thou under with a 534 run, 1-8 at 123. So Brian moves on. Troy is gone. And Ricky Adkins and Gary Williams come up next. Adkins into Mr. Gasket lane, 528 dial in. And Gary Williams on the lane side, 510. Double 01 018. Gary with a better light. At Ricky with a better finish, 528. With an 8, he is dead on, 122. Gary Williams was 001 reaction time. He breaks out by 4 thousandths. 509 with a 6 at 130. You can get that celebration started now and at 50,000. Rob Lutsky and Bob Jennings. Rob's in Mr. Gasket lane. Bob Jennings, Mississauga, Ontario, Canada. 490 dial out on the lane side. Lutsky and Jennings. Great start, Bob Jennings. Double breakout win, 489-0. The crowd at the Mississauga drive-in goes wild, 139 mile per hour. Lutsky, 533 with a 3, breaks out at 128. Ken Langlois, Mr. Gasket side. 505 dial in for Kenny. Tranny shop owner in Milan, Michigan. It's a Mullis car. Tad Reese from Ohio. Lane side dialed 508 for the Rankler Reese team. Foul start for Ken Langlois. Reese is 022. Runs 507 at 134. 503 Ken Langlois, 13th foul under over there at 136. Nick Folk, 469 on the lane side, Durand, Illinois. And John Parks, 458 dial in. That's the Fordyce gang. Annapolis, Maryland. Put on the parade on the return road last evening during the late rounds of the 50 grander. 012 and double 03. Falk with the advantage and the win. 468, another double breakout, 147 mile per hour. John Parks breaks out by 2 thou, 457.8. 151, they're both 2 thou under. A little better light. Nick Falk secured the win in that one. John Rankel. 506 dial in Mr. Gasket's side. Again, final call. All dragsters should be in the staging lanes. Round number 3. Dalton Samuel. DeLon Springs, Florida. 473 dial in lane side. And the Rankle and Reese team. John over there in the 506 dial in. Double 05 and a dead on 6 run. 473, 140 mile per hour. Dalton Samuel moving on. John Rankle was dead on 3, 506 at 127. But he had a 34 light. That's not going to get it done. Mark Kelly, Mike Brumfield up next. Brumfield, 469 dial in on the lane side. Mark Kelly. From the Garden State, Southampton, New Jersey, over on the East Coast. Those of you listening that weren't geography majors, 484 dial in. Mr. Gasket Lane. New Jersey's not by the Grand Canyon. I got an email response from that earlier. I must have misspoke. 4.06 light. Redfield gets the win. 4.69's dead on tour. 144 mile per hour. Mark Kelly, 11th foul under, 482. Hit 142 after a 20 light. Judging by the text I'm getting, I'm assuming that Pat and the boys must be at home listening. Go out in the garage and get something done, damn it. 489, Scott Horline. Todd Zeller, 455 on the lane side. 005 light, Todd Zeller, 455 dead on 3. That's an 8,000s package, 152 the speed. 491 over at 134, Scott Horline. David Davis, Toledo, Ohio. 501 dial in. And BS over there in the Mr. Gasket lane. 499. Bill Smith. Number 14, David Davis, 503, 129 for the win. BS is 2 off, 501, 133. Had a 42 late. Not good enough. Matt Hewitt, Bob Patton, Peyton. Day 4. It is day 4. But I know who Bob Payton is, though. Lane side. 479 dial-in for the Fowlerville, Michigan racer. And Matt Hewitt out of Milan, Michigan. Mad Dog Motorsports. 495 dial-in, Mr. Gasket Lane. Flicker, solid. They're away. 3,000ths of a second apart. Double breakout win, Matt Hewitt, 494. 138 mile per hour. Double breakout. Peyton, a little further under, 477. On the 79 dial in at 144. Doug Katina and Bill Riddle up next. Minnesota racer Catino in the 492 dial in the Mr. Gasket lane. And Bill Riddle, another Fowlerville entry. Halfway in between Lansing and Detroit. That's Detroit for all you non-French speaking folks. 482, lane side. 492, they're a dime apart. Speaking of that, where'd my French-Canadian buddy go with the Firebird? Is that on his way home? Yeah. 479, Bill Riddle. 144 mile per hour. Doug Katina fouled out by 13 thousandths of a second. And lucky for Bill, he did. He had a 60 light. Right place, right time. So Bill's moving on. And Joe Hesley and Ken Zeller come up next. .488, 490, Joe Hessling, Ken Czar, 2 foul apart reaction times, both in the teens. Hessling, 490 with a 139 mile per hour, 4 thousandths MOV. Ken Czar dead on 6, 488 at 140. And he's going home. Back to the show me state. Old Joe showed him the door on that run. Kirby McLennan, Roy Blair. 475 dial in for Kirby. Bluegrass racer. Roy Blair with a 491 dial in on the lane side. Foul start for Kirby McLennan. Goes red by 5 thousandths. 486 Roy Blair under that 91 dial in by a good bit. 142 mile per hour. We'll see him back in the next round. Round number 4. As McLennan goes dead on 9 to the 475 at 144. Sometimes it's better just to shut it off. You don't want to know. You had one end of the racetrack set up right. Bruce Carl. Chad Branham. 485, 479. Branham in a white car here on the lane side. That 79 dial in belongs to him. Bruce Carl with a 485, Mr. Gasket's side. Chad Branham. Almost perfect reaction time. He's going to get the win. 480 at 140 miles per hour. He was 002 green. Bruce Carl had a light in the 20s. Runs 483 with a 5. That's 15 thou under. 140 mile an hour for the Minnesota racer. And Jeff Hura and Amy Kirchen come back. 482 dial in Hura. And Amy over here on the lane side is going to go with a 501. Final start, Jeff Hura. Amy Kirchen, 502, 136. Off 100th from her last run. Jeff Hura, 003 foul, 481-2, breaks out, 141. Heading back to Ohio, Chad Baddick, Bob Drews. .490 dial in for Bob and Skyler. Chad Baddick, 493 dial in. Mr. Gasket side. Final start for Bob Drews. 002 red light, Chad Baddick's 016. Runs dead on 0 on a 493 run, 139. Bob 2 off, 492, goes 140 on that run. Megan Kearns, 598 dial in for Megan. And Bobby Johns with a 495 dial in lane side with the Mosier Engineering car. .22, 42, red light on, Bobby Johns, 495. At 129, he had a better light by 2, Hun. Takes the 300s finish line. Megan went over at 599 at 117. Richard Briscoe, Howard Schulter up next. .482 dial in for Briscoe. The Illinois racer taking on Wisconsin's Howard Schulter. 100th of a second apart in their dial-ins. 481 to a 482. 002 right. Richard Briscoe is almost perfect. Double breakout win for Briscoe. 481 at 9. Under by 1,000th of a second. 142. Schulter, 479 on the 81 dial-in. And Joshua Morgan, Tim Irwin come up next. Joshua's on the Mr. Gasket side, 476 dial-in. And Tim Irwin on the lane side, dial 490. For the second advantage, going to Josh Morgan off the mark, and he's going to get the win. 481's a nickel over. 135 mile per hour. Irwin misses the number by 800s, wins 498 at 142. And a rather sour 118 60-foot time for 490 dragster. That's off pace. Morgan gets the win. We'll see him back in the next round. Joe Bowman, Bill Press Sr. 493 dial-in for Joe. Mr. Gasket side, Press with a 495 dial-in on the lane side. Problems for Bill Prest on the starting line, and Joe Bowman was 008 off the mark. Looked over just past the 330, seen that Bill was nowhere to be found as they were dialed nearly heads up, and he knew something was up or down. Bill never even got it off the starting line. Joe eased out of it, pedaled it a couple of times, killed enough. 509, 125. He's moving on. Bill Prest apparently won't go forward, and he backs up behind the Motorplex tower. All dragsters, all cars should be in the staging lanes here for the third round of competition. We need door cars of all colors, door cars, all colors back to the staging lanes. Joe Schmall still sitting on that buy run. There's Jenny Lynn. And Kurt Voltman. Ryan Lambton. Brian Lambton, Cairo, Ohio, 489 dial-in, heads up with Jenny Zednick. 012, 028, better start, went to Lambton, runs 489. Dead on with a 3 at 137. Jenny goes 490 with a 0 at 141. A little better tree for Brian Lambton, takes a 200s finish line, gets the job done at the stripe. John Labash Jr., Dean Kearns. Check this matchup out. 451 dial-in for the Brown car. Thursday night winner, John Labash, past 50K champ. Both almost perfect off the mark. One light on, Labash Jr., 488.4, 136. It worked out for him there. 100th of a second MOV. Disco Dean was 001. John was 003. 452's won over Kearns at 157. John is dead on 4 for the win. The 003 reaction time, 7,000's package. Ricky Atkins, Bob Clark up next. $4.99 dial in for Ricky to Mr. Gasket Lane. Bob Clark over here on the lane side, $5.04 dial in. Double 013 double breakout win. Atkins 498 with a 9. Foul under 135 mile per hour. Clark breaks out by 6 thou with a 503 run at 136. Here's Randy Shearer Jr. Barrel Motorsports. Shearer with a 477 dial in. As does Mark Horton. Almost said Brian. Mark Horton. Co-owner of American Race Cars, Millbury, Ohio, on the lane side. 477s apiece. We are heads up between the two Buckeyes. Red light, good night. Mark Horton goes right by 11 thousandths of a second. 013 green. Shearer. 479's 2 over at 144. Horton with a 478. That's 1 over. And only 131. Bob Koski. Former Michigan resident, now living down in Texas. 507 dial in. And Brian Falk with a 479 dial on the lane side. Wind light on here. Brian Falk, 479 at 141 after a 19 light. Bob Koski was 003 and breaks out by a thou, taking 200's finish line. Hate it when that happens. 138 miles per hour. And Travis Colangelo. Bug McCarty. And Dwayne Blair. McCarty and Blair. It ain't Travis. 009, 021. I don't care what it says, Mike. It's not Travis. 496, breaking out by 2 thousandths of a second, but getting the wind light, Dwayne Blair. 132 mile per hour. McCarty, 485, breaking out by 14 thousandths of a second and 140 mile per hour from the lane side. Here's Austin St. Dennis. Lane side of the racetrack this time, 514 dial in. Nick Falk, 477, Mr. Gasket side. Seven foul partner reaction times. They were both good. Nick Falk in a double breakout is going to get the win. 011, 018, 476, 142. 513 for Austin. He's under by 2 thousandths as well. But a little bit of reaction time advantage for Nick Falk. Helped him get the job done at the finish line. The math worked out better. So Falk moves on. Austin is gone. And Chris Wallen, Skylar Drills come up. 520 dial in for Chris, lane side. Skylar's going to go with a 487 and a Mr. Gay. Red light start, Skylar Drills. fouls out by 2 minutes for a second. Chris Wallen, 5:18. 18 foul under. Didn't matter. Red light was on as soon as Skyler cut her loose. 486 with a 6, 141 for the Drones crew. And Ryan Pinkelman and Jason Folk come up. 5:05 dial in Mr. Gaskett side for the Maumee, Ohio racer, and Jason Folk out of Bradenton, Florida. Famous racing city. It's kind of like the Indianapolis of bracket racers. Bracket racing cities. Maybe? Yeah. We'll go with that. Minus 003 1. Jason Folk fouls out. 421 light. Pinkelman. 5:05 with a 3. 135 mile per hour. Jason 486.9. He's under by a nickel. In addition to that 3,000th red light. Will Crawford. And Sean Parker. All right, door cars. Again, final call, door cars. Run round number 3. Anything has a run round number 3. We need you up here. Parker to the 506 dial in. Lane side. Will Crawford. 483 dial in into Mr. Gaskett lane. .43 and 506. They're off and running. 008 light Crawford. Wind light on for Will. 482.9 under by 139 mile per hour. Parker 505 with a 5. He breaks out by 5 thousandths. And 136. Will closer to the number. Gets the win and he moves on. Right, there's the aforementioned Travis Colangelo and the other Bug McCarty dragster. 482 dial in, Mr. Gaskett Lane, and Jeremy McCormick. 489 dial in over here on the lane side. .014, .022. McCormick breaks out, 488 at 140. 6 thou under. Travis, dead on, 482. 140 mile per hour to Mr. Gaskett lane. Troy Williams Jr. lane side. And Mark Daberstein. He'll be into Mr. Gaskett lane with a 553 dial in. Troy with a 506. The overkill car. Two-time winner to a 50K. That's the car, not Troy. Brother Geary won an earlier at the wheel of that machine. Foul start, Mark Daberstein by a foul goes red. 506 with a 9. Troy with a win, 136 mile per hour. 555.5, 126.26. Daberstein after 8-1. 1,000th red light. Chuck Mink, lane side, Richmond, Indiana. Mink Motorsports, 476 dial in on this run. To take on 2010 50K champ, Steve McCrory, 529 dial in from Taylorsville, Georgia. .014 and 006. McCrory had a better light. Few rips of the throttle and McCurry's wind light comes on. Boom! 528 with a 1, 126 mile per hour for McCurry. Mink, 474, breaking out by 18 thousandths of a second. Goes 144 mile per hour at the stripe. Gary Williams. This morning's 50K champion, lane side, 507 dial in. The other entry. One that won, we just saw go down the track with his brother at the wheel. And Bill Wood on the Holloway group. Mr. Gasket Lane, 482 dial in. 2.5 tenths difference in the dial ins here. Half a bulb. On both sides. Wind light on Mr. Gasket Lane. Bill Riddle, 482, 141. That's dead on 3. Gary Williams breaks out by 3 thousandths, 506. And 134. So Bill Riddle and the Holloway Company. He'll be back in the next round. And Dan Davies in the water box to take on Johnny Simeone. House car from Diamond Race Cars. Dan Davies, 458 dial in. Mr. Gasket Lane. Door car, Johnny Simeone, Sudbury, Ontario, Canada. 66 Chevy 2. 589 dial in. So we start seeing some door cars trickle in. We're in round number 3 of our $5,000 cleanup race. Laura Ray and Johnny's got the better light. 591, 115. The door car moves on after a 15 thousandths margin of victory. 459, Dan Davies. He was 28 off the starting line. John Nagy and Chad Six going at it. Winner of the cleanup race last year, Six with the Mustang, now at the wheel of this street Roadster. Eaton Rapids, Michigan. Trying to find a place to dial at. 606 on the window this time. We're on a dialing board anyway. Oh, Chad. Ain't going to matter what the Roadster runs with a light like that. He has to wait. Nagy, 664, dead on 3. R21 reaction time. He had a little more room to judge the stripe than that, but he had confidence. Or at least that's what I'd be telling everybody. 6 with a 606. 110.86, but had a light that started with a 1. It generally means you're going to have an ET slip. It starts with an L. That's what happened there. John Nagy on to the next round. Eric Johnson, Thomas Whitaker coming up.
A little better right to Tom Whitaker, and he gets it done. 543 with a 6, 127. Eric Johnson, 612. He's 2 under. Had 112 mile per hour. Final call. Absolute final call. Any cars that have not run round number 3 that are still in need to be up in the staging lanes. All right, attention to pits, dragsters. All cars, any dragster. Round number 4, we need you back to 7 and 8. All dragsters, all cars, back to 7 and 8 for round number 4. Jim Hamilton, Mike Marcette up next. Oh, but Mike Marcette all over the place again off the starting line. Car is spooky. All of a sudden, 636, Jim Hamilton's 2 over at 107. They were fighting some demons in that car 4th of July weekend. They appear to have that resolved. So he's moving on. Marcette, despite all the handling problems, he was 0-14 off the mark. Runs 2 off the number at 562. 119, 28 10,000ths margin of victory there. Jim Hamilton moving on. And Larry Zion, Mr. Gasket Lane, 595 dial in for the good-looking Gray Nova. Dan Root, D. Piazza. 97 Camaro from Chi-Town. 541 dial-in's going to get the win here as Larry Zion turns on the cherry. 003 foul over to Mr. Gaskett's side. 5:38, 130 mile per hour for DiPiazza. Breaking out, but it didn't matter after Larry went red. And he runs 5:92 on that 95 dial-in for the Nova at 1:15. Kelly Smith, Mark Hancock up next. 580 dial-in for Kelly. Mr. Gaskett's side. Mark Hancock on the lane side, Boyd City, Michigan. Kelly with a better rate. 11:028. He's got the win. 581, 119 mile per hour. Kelly Smith moves on. 668 breaking out. Mark Hancock at 102. Matt Cornell, 50K champion from 2011. Larry Murray in the Mustang Roadster out of Memphis, Michigan, down 618. Cornell with a 569 dial-in. Red light start. Larry Murray, another driver that fouls out by 1,000th of a second. 567 Cornell at 119. 617 Larry Murray at 114. And Matt got away with one. He had a light in the 50s. Larry Murray left 1,000th of a second too soon. Bill Yorchuk. Jeff Lustinghauser the second. Chevrolet Vega from Bellevue. Thumbs up car. Down 580. And Bill Yorchuk into Brett on the lane side. Down 536. They're good par green lights. 017, 028 at the 8th mile mark. Yorchuk, 537, one over at 133. Jeff Westinghauser makes the quickest run I believe he's made all year. 577 at 120. Into this headwind. Picked the wrong time to do it. Good run, but unfortunately it doesn't pay anything. 648, Andy Schmall, Mr. Gaskett's side. Al Hodder. 653, they're a nickel apart with Al getting a chance to lead first with the Camaro. Oh 13, oh 15, oh 2 apart, one light on, Andy Schmall. 648 for the Little Vega, 110 or 100 mile per hour even. 651, Alan Hodder makes his best run of the weekend. And it's crazy out there. It looks like the wind is picking up. And we're still seeing some breakouts. 107 mile per hour for Al. And Scotty Baddock in the Mustang comes up to take on the chain.
2011 NHRA Summit ET Series champion. He went out to Pomona and whooped him. He got the 629 dial-in. Baddock with a 698. Oh, the champ. Caught one on the chin. He is 20. Scotty Baddock, 007. Oh, and Baddock breaks out. Takes a 10th at the stripe. And Brandon Schmall is going to get away with one. 630 is one over. 99 mile per hour. The 70 Challenger is going to move on. And he won't be flashing that ET slip around old Lido Lakes, Minnesota at the tavern. Scotty Baddock. Yeah, the W part's good. That'll work. They don't ask you how you got there. How'd you do this weekend? I won. What happened? I beat the other guy. Greg Collins, Joe Bowman. Joe fouls out by 0.02 of a second. Collins, 594. It's under by 300ths of a second, 116 mile per hour. Joe runs dead on, 555 with a 9. But he lit the red ball by 0.02 of a second. And Scott Horline and Joe Hessling up next. Horline on the lane side, 624 dial in for that 73 Duster. He and Bob out of Saginaw. And Hessling for Team Mallard, Kearns Motorsports. That Chevrolet Cavalier is going to go with a 601. Mr. Gasket side. Fast start for Joe as he goes red by 2,000ths. Yeah, I tell you, Scott got away with one there. 58 light. It's getting a little deep into eliminations for those wins. He goes dead on one. 624 to 109. As I'm trying to spit the ET and the speed out at the same time. 598, Joe Hessling. Under on both ends. Not good. Announcer with a dyslexic tongue. Brian Falk and Bug McCarty. Salvage yard operator down Georgia. That 67 Camaro goes red by 6,000ths of a second. Falk, 507. Runs 505 with the 67 Roadster. Bug McCarty shuts off to an 813 at 60 mile per hour. Final pair of the round. Will Crawford, lane side, a 67 Camaro out of Saline. And a wild ride in his time trial earlier. He crossed the finish line with the rear tires locked up. Got her stopped, didn't make contact with anything. Didn't wear the shiny off that pretty Camaro. He's here in round number 3 with a 630 dial in on the lane side to take on Minnesota racer Joe Schmall, trying to defend a bye run. 695 dial in for the Fast and Furious. 69 Mopar into Mr. Gasket lane. 20 lights apiece here, only 2 foul apart. Schmall and Crawford. Will's going to get the win. 631s, 1 over, 104 mile per hour. All right, Bob Jennings, lane side, Mississauga, Ontario, Canada. Backing up after his burnout across the starting line to take on Brian Horton. Brian to Mr. Gasket lane, Walbridge Automotive. 485 dial in, they're a nickel apart as Jennings is going to go with a 490. Start, Bob Jennings. 489, he's under at the other end too. Brian Horton, 023, runs 485, he's dead on 6. .142 mile per hour the speed for Brian Horton. As he is dead on 6 to move on. Bill Riddle, Fowlerville, Michigan, Mr. Gasket lane. And Todd Reese, lane side. 507 dial in. The Rankle and Reese team. Bill Riddle, 200ths of a second better in reaction time. He was 035. He's going to run 1 over for the win. 481 at 138. 200 stripe there. 508. Tad Rise, 1 over, goes 134. Ricky Adkins, Nick Falk next up. Falk on the lane side for Huntsville Engine. Todd Ewing, our event sponsor. Owns up in Seattle this weekend at the Powerade Lucas Oil National event. Graciously threw the keys on the table for Nick to run his race car after that unfortunate incident that the folks had here earlier this year where their operation was severely damaged in a highway accident. Ricky Atkins, chassis builder from Milan, Michigan. Better right here with the Folk. It's almost perfect. Win goes to Nick with a 469 run, 143 mile per hour. Takes 100th at the finish line. Ricky was dead on zero. 528 at 125 wasn't good enough there. 16,000th package gets trailered. Matt Hewitt and Roy Blair out of Kentucky. We just saw the Bulldog. Here's the Mad Dog. Hewitt and the Mr. Gasket Lane, another Milan, Michigan guy. 494 dial-in. Kentucky racer Blair, 488 dial-in on the lane side in this one. Double breakout win, Matt Hewitt. He had a better light, 019 to 031. Runs 493.9, under by a foul at 138 mile per hour. And Roy Blair, 487, breaking out by 6 thousandths. Quick purge of the nitrous oxide, David Davis. Another Ohio racer up here in the starting line, take on Chad Baddock out of Tecumseh, Michigan. 493 dial. Mr. Gasket side, Davis, 501, less than a tenth of a second apart. Davis hit the tire hard when he left. Baggs got the better right, and Davis has got the win. And the Toledo, Ohio crew on the starting line goes wild. 501, dead on zero after a 16 light. A 16 thousandths package got it done that time. Don't tell Ricky Atkins that. Chad Bradham and Brian Lambton, 488 dial on the Mr. Gasket Lane for Lamp. And Chad Bradham, 479 dial over here on the lane side for the Rockford, Illinois racer. Again, all dragsters should be in the staging lanes. We'll run around number 4. Few pumps at the stripe. Wind light comes on. Brian Lambton, 488. 137 after a 14 green. Chad Bradham is 022. Runs 478, breaks out by 3 thousandths of a second and 141. All right, attention to the pits. We misidentified and we were looking at the sheet. And actually, Gary Williams is out of the race. He was 001, but he didn't win. So he was eligible for it if he just would have turned the wind light on. Gary's crew identified that for us, and we went back to the sheet. Richard Briscoe is sitting on the bye run here for round number 4. Must be day 4. Richard doesn't care about that. He's sitting on the bye, and we pulled him aside, and we'll be waiting to see if he's got an opponent. Meantime, Dalton Samuel, Joe Bowman are on the starting line. 493 and 472 the dial ends, and they are 4th out apart, heading to the finish line. Wind light on. Bowman, another double breakout. Joe goes on to round 5. 492 with a 6. 139 mile per hour. Dalton, 471-2, breaks out by 8 thousandths of a second. He goes 143 in the 8th. All right, attention to pits. We need all door cars to the staging lanes. Door cars, we need all of you up here for round number 4. All of you are still in anyway. Randy Shearer Jr. Right, 4 o'clock on fuel and souvenirs. 4 o'clock on fuel and souvenirs. 4:30 on the concession stand.
Bobby Johns, 494 dial in on the lane side. And Randy Shaw Jr., APD employee down there in North Central Ohio. On the Mr. Gasket side, 478, the Bear Motorsports car. 100th apart in their reaction times. Shaw's going to get the win light, 476, under by 13 thousandths of a second, 144 mile per hour. And Bobby Johns breaks out a little further, 492.5, that's 15 thou under at 139 for the loss. Josh Morgan, Steve McCurry, 507 dial in lane side, that's Steven. 476 Mr. Gasket side, that's Joshua. We need all door cars back to the staging lanes for round number 4. All door cars, round number 4, should be in the lanes. Double 07 and 018 off the starting line. Another double breakout. We haven't heard that before. 506 under by 4 thou after a 007 light, 131 mile per hour. Josh Morgan, 474, 7, 13 thou under after an 18 green. So Steven moves on. Josh is gone. And Joe Hessling in the McCormick Motorsports car. McCormick Racing. Comes up to take on Todd Zeller. Todd's Extreme Custom Paints, one of our giveaway donors this weekend. Custom paint job, gift certificate, or custom helmet paint job. That's Todd down there in Milan with that Steve Schmidt power plant. With a 455 dial in, lane side. Joe Hessling's going to go with a 489. He and Jeremy McCormick teaming up here. And they're going to be moving on as Todd Zeller fouls out by 7 thousandths of a second. And Hessling got away with one there a bit. 042 light. He runs dead on. 489 to the 6. And 140. Zeller breaks out in addition to going red. 454.7 to 152. Mike Brumfield, lane side, 467 dial in. Mink Motorsports car out of Indiana. And Ryan Pinkelman, 505 dial in, Mr. Gasket lane for the Ohioan. Oh, 27. Reaction time for Pinkelman. Bloomfields was minus 14. He's out of here. 503, Pinkelman, 5037. That's under by 13 thousandths of a second as I have to take a double glance to do the math. 135 mile per hour. Bloomfield won over, 468 and 149. Ricky Adkins, 499 dial in for the other entry for the chassis builder from Milan, Michigan. And Amy Kirchen, Fowlerville, Michigan. Lane side, 502 dial in. Great start for Amy. She's got the advantage. Double breakout win, Amy Kirchen, as Richard goes wild. 501 with a 2 at 136 mile per hour. And a double breakout. Adkins, 25 thou under at 496, 134 after a 20 light. John Labash Jr. Lane side, 488 dial in. Took out our Thursday champ, Disco D, in the last round. John, the 2009 winner of the 50K, taking on Troy Williams Jr. Overkill Motorsports, 505 dial in. John, 12 thousandths better at the tree. John, win light on at the finish line. 488, dead on 9, 136. 300ths of a second margin of victory there. Troy missed it on both ends. Got covered up. 030 light, 508 on the 05 dial in. Two Ohioans here. Chris Wallen. Lane side, Spencer, Ohio. 518 dial in. Gets set to take on Travis Colangelo. It's the American Race Cars fabricator, chassis builder. 482 dial in.
into Mr. Gasket Lane. Green lights for these two. Triumph's a little better at the start, and he's going to get the win. 011 right. 484 on the 82 dial and 135. 200's finish line. Most of it came in reaction time. There's Wallen, 520. And 129. A little closer on the little numbers. Travis Colangelo, the better light. Got the whole shot, got the win. There's Brian Falk and Will Crawford up next. Need all door cars, all cars back to the lane. Should be in the staging lanes here for round number 4. Richard Briscoe sitting on Dubai with his dragster from Illinois. 482 dial in Crawford, Mr. Gasket Lane. Brian Falk, 479 from the lane side. 300ths of a second. Difference in the handicap here. 006 and 022. Falk with the advantage. Little throttle work at the stripe and a 479 win for Falk, 141 mile per hour. 480 breaking out by 14 thousandths of a second. Crawford had 143 miles per hour. All right, Dwayne Blair, Mr. Gasket's side. Swamp Bridge, Kentucky racer. 496 dial in. Bill Riddle and that Holloway gang. Malice Cooper looking on down there. Malice goes wild. Final start, Dwayne Blair. Riddle, 052. Normally not good enough, but it's going to get it done this time. Red light determined the race before. Bill even decked it. 481, 143. He moves on. All right, Nick Falk, Mr. Gasket Lane, 478 dial in, and Steve McCurry. Some of these guys that are doubleheader, you got to take a minute here and give them an opportunity to get back to the staging lanes to get in their second entry. Steven, 529 dial in on the lane side. Falk, going to go with a 478. Durant, Illinois racer to Mr. Gasket Lane. Double 08 light and a double breakout win. Steve McCurry, 528, 2,000 under at 126. And an 019 light for Nick Falk, runs 477.1. He's under by 9 thousandths. Door cars coming at you. John Nagy. 78 Camaro into Mr. Gasket Lane. 664 is going to be leaving first in this pair. Things go according to plan. And Johnny Simeone for Autolab Performance. Sudbury, Ontario, Canada. 590 dial in on the lane side. Well, Johnny set the trans brake. The bottom two bulbs went out, and he gets a foul start.
He guns the throttle out of frustration and roll off the starting line, and Johnny Simeone backed out of the staging beams when he set the trans brake. 665, John Nagy. And John's light can be excused, because I think he was a little confused by what happened there with the staging lights on the bottom of the tree, but doesn't matter because he's going to get a time ticket with a great big W on it. We'll see him back in the next round. And Andrew DiPiazza, he hopes he gets a win slip. 97 Camaro from the Windy City. 540 dial-in. And Jim Hamilton, 636, into Mr. Gasket lane. Good green lights apart. DiPiazza, double or 5 lights, the middle of 2. He's going to break out, double break out. 635, under by a thou. We've seen that a ton. 107 mile per hour Hamilton. DiPiazza had 2 off the starting line. Takes a stripe by 3. Hun breaks out by 12 thou. Do the math. LOSE. Tom Whitaker, Billy Orchak up next. 543 dial on Mr. Gasket's side for the 68 Camaro out of Muskegon. Billy Orchak's going to get the win here. Whitaker fouls out by 14 thousandths. 424 light for Orchak. 539, 130 mile per hour for the Beretta. 541 with a 5. Breaking out Whitaker after a 14 thousandths foul. Scott Hornline, 73 Duster out of Saginaw. Out of it with a dragster, still hanging tough with a door car. Andy Schmall, 71 Vega from Lino Lakes, Minnesota. 648 into Mr. Gasket lane. Both drivers away, the Vega and the Plymouth. Schmall was 0-11. He's got the win. 648, dead on 5. 101 mile per hour. Hornline won over at 625 at 110. He was 28 off the mark. Greg Collins, Wyoming, Minnesota. 71 Challenger. Kelly Smith in the 27T. 581 dial in on the lane side. Collins, 594. Kelly Smith fouls out by 6 thousandths of a second. Collins, 595, one over at 115 mile per hour. 582 for Kelly at 116. And Matt Cornell comes up. Harlow Tire, Chevrolet Camaro, 50K winner here last year. To take on the national champ, Brandon Schmall. 70 Challenger. 627 dial in, Mr. Gasket's side. Matt's going to go with a 568. Small, good one shaping up here with 2 great lights. Double breakout win for Matt, 567.6. He was 005 in reaction time, runs 119. Brandon Schmall, 624. His quickest run of the weekend. Hit 102 mile per hour after an 014 light. Double breakout. Cornell's moving on.
And again, we're waiting for some of these guys that are still in with 2 entries. Get themselves back up to the staging lanes. But we're okay. We're glad they're here. Brian Falk rolling the Camaro Roadster. Up in the water box on the Mr. Gasket side. So I'm stretching the mic cord here, looking out the window to see what's going on out there. Round number 5, dragsters to the staging lanes. Round 5, all dragsters to the staging lanes. Bring them up. Round number 5, dragsters back to the staging lanes. All right, Brian Falk, 507. Will Crawford back up here in the 67 Camaro, dialed 628. Again, all dragsters back to the staging lanes. All dragsters should be back in the staging lanes. Falk with a little advantage in reaction time. 16,000 a second is going to get it done with a dead-on 0 run. 507-0, 133. It's 15 on a tree. Will gets down there and breaks out. And Richard Briscoe comes up. Oakley, Illinois with the dragster. Mr. Gasket side, 481 dial-in. Again, we need dragsters back to the staging lanes so we can get this one in the books. Dragsters should be in the staging lanes for the next round. Richard Briscoe, 003 off the mark, exercising his by run. He goes 479 with a 5. And Brian Horton sitting in the water box. There comes Brian. Wallbridge, Ohio racer take on the Georgia native. Brian getting set to go. That 485 dial in. McCrory dials 506. He'll be on the lane side. Stephen McCrory's 008 off the mark. He's got the advantage. Brian Horton's going to get the win. 485, 138. McCrory 2 over. 508 at 130. That was a 16/10,000ths margin of victory. And Bill Riddle and David Davis come up next. 480 dial-in for Riddle. And David Davis. 5 seconds flat. Getting set to go. Both drivers not real anxious to light that bottom bulb. Davis bumping it in very cautiously. Both of them light the bottom bulbs at the same time. And they're away, and one of them is late. David Davis had the advantage of reaction time, and he's going to get the win. 499. And a double breakout. 3 thou under. 134 mile per hour. He was 0-15. Riddle missed the tree with a 50 light. Runs 478 with a 6 at 142 on the 480 dial in. Next up, Nick Folk and Joe Bowman. 492 dial in, Mr. Gasket side for Joe. Nick dials a 469. He'll be on the lane side. Nick Falk, 003 light. Nick Falk with the win. 71, 140 mile per hour as Joe breaks out by 2 thou. 491 with an 8 at 139. Matt Hewitt, Mr. Gasket Lane, and Amy Kirchen on the lane side. 501 dial in for Amy. And Matt Mad Dog Hewitt, 494. All racers are still in, should be in staging lanes here for round number 5. Amy Kirchen almost perfect off the starting line. Double run, she breaks out 5 seconds flat. Quickest run I think I've seen that car make. 135 mile per hour. Picked a bad time to do it. She took a little bit too much straight. Didn't have a lot to work with. Hewitt was right there. He was dead on zero and had a 12 light. 494 runs 138 mile per hour in another great drag race that we've been watching all weekend long. John Labash Jr. and Ohio and Brian Lambton. Heads up, 488s apiece. Auto start. 001, 031, Lambton. 488 with a 6. He was 001. That's a 7 thousandths package. 139 mile per hour as John Labash breaks out by 15 thousandths of a second. 486.5, 132 as he parked it down there at the stripe. Darn near got timed out by auto start. Brian Falk. Lane side. Getting set to take on Randy Shore Jr. Bear Motorsports, 476, 479 to dial ins between these two. Start, Randy Shore. Minus 005, red. Falk with 6 thousandths green. He is dead on zero. That's a 6 thousandths package, even though he really didn't need it. As Falk determined the race, back here at the starting line with that 5 thousandths red light. He was one over on the run, 477.0 at 145. As Joe Hessling spit it out one way or another. No doubt about it. And Travis Colangelo. Seems like it would have messed that one up. 42 and 489, they're 700ths of a second apart. Travis over here on the lane side. And Bug McCarty's car, hanging tough. Chosen the McCormick Racing entry, Jeremy McCormick from up northern Michigan. Seven thousandths of a second apart. Advantage to Travis. 482 with a 137 mile per hour, 24 thousandths as a stripe, gets it done. 490, one over Joe Hessling. He goes 137 mile per hour. Richard Briscoe, Ryan Pinkelman. $479 dial in for Richard, Mr. Gasket side. Pinkelman, $505 dial in on the lane side. A lot of flickering going on in that bottom berm. 7 foul apart reaction times. Wind light on Pinkelman, 505, dead on 2, 134. The 12 thousandths margin of victory in that one. 481, 2 off at 142 for Briscoe. Steve McCurry. And Bill Riddle back up on the lane side, the other Holloway car. 482 dial in. McCurry. This second entry, 528. Mr. Gasket Lane. Double 001 foul, Steve McCurry, Bill Riddle. Moving on. 008 reaction time, 41.3, 143 mile per hour. McCurry shuts off to a 560 at only 95. And John Nagy and Bill Yorchuk come up next. Yorchuk and the Brett over here on the lane side, 538 dial in. Nagy. Wet Camaro is going to go with a 665 dial. Mr. Gasket Lane. Red light start. John Nagy by 4 thou. Yorchuk. He's 2 thou under his green light. First to worst. Yorchuk's going to get the win. Bill goes 539 at 130 mile per hour. Moving on. 668. Nagy 3 over. Goes 101 at the stripe. Jim Hamilton, Andy Schmall up next. 636 dial in for Jim, and at 72, Chevy Nova. And Andy Schmall, Minnesota Trio, along his brother Brandon, Dad Joe. 647 dial in on the lane side with that Vega. Another good pair of green lights here. 7th foul apart with a double eight leading the way. Schmall, 648's one over for the win. 100 mile an hour even. 635 breaking out by 4 thousandths of a second. Hamilton had 107 mile per hour. All right, we're going to let Matt Cornell take his bye run here. So we got another pair back in the staging lanes, but we're waiting for one of the drivers to return to the staging lanes. It was running 2 entries. And all Matt had to do there was just stage and take the tree. Yeah, he met all of our requirements. More than we actually require anywhere. We're easy like that. All right, Brian Falk coming back up in the Roadster, and Greg Collins awaits that challenge with a Mopar from Minnesota. All right, it's Collins and Falk rolling to the water box. At this time, I want to put the call out. Dragsters, all colors, all dragsters back to the staging lanes for round number 6. All dragsters, round number 6, back to the staging lanes. Greg Collins, 594 dial in. Getting set to take on Brian Falk from Illinois. Camaro Roadster on the lane side of the 507 dial in. Collins, 594. Mr. Gasket side. Red light. Good night, Greg Collins. Headed back to Minnesota. Brian Falk, he's sticking around. 506 with a 2 after a 35 light. There's Nick Falk and Brian Horton. American Race Cars Dragster, Brian Horton, Walbridge, Ohio. One of our regular competitors here at Mid Michigan. 485 dial in, Mr. Gasket side, and Nick Falk on the lane side, Durant, Illinois, with the Huntsville engine car. He'll be on the lane side, 469 dial in, 1600ths of a second apart, into handicap. Round number 6, first pair. Final start. Nick Falk goes red by 300ths of a second. Horton, 487, 2 over, goes 132. He had a 38 light. That doesn't matter. Nick Falk, the 3000s. Foul. Determine the race back here at the Christmas tree. David Davis. Matt Hewitt. Matt Mad Dog Hewitt. 493 dial in. 600ths of a second apart. Handicap going to David Davis out of Toledo. Lane side. That S&W chassis car. Couple purges of the spray, and David will roll up to find the pre-stage beams. Hewitt to Mr. Gasket lane. Both drivers bump them in carefully. No mind game, just being cautious. Final start. David Davis goes red by 0.02 of a second. Hewitt, double 06, dead on 0, 6,000ths package. Davis, 499, he's dead on 2. 130 mile per hour and turned the red bulb on by 2 thou. It's tight up there. Bill Riddle. Ryan Pinkelman.
Mr. Gasket Lane, Fowlerville, Michigan, Holloway Company. Special thanks again to them for providing our entertainment last evening.
And Ryan Pinkelman, 505 dial in. Lane side. Riddle's double 08 off the mark. He's got the advantage. And the win. 481. He's dead on 4. 139 mile per hour Riddle. 12,000ths package there. It's Pinkelman. 5043. He was 22 green. Went 135 at the stripe. Riddle got the win. He'll move on to the next round. Brian Folk. 479 dial in. Mr. Gasket Lane. And Travis Colangelo. From Ohio on the lane side, down 481. Red light start. Travis Colangelo by 4,000ths. He's out. 010 light. 552 coasting across. Brian Falk into the next round. And we're into the door cars. It's Matt Cornell. 50K winner, 2011. Comes to the starting line with another door car. That's Bill Yorchuk. 66-year-old Canadian. It was our over 50 gamblers winner here on Friday night. 539 dial in for the Beretta. Matt with a Camaro, leaving first with 567. Oh, problems there for Bill Yorchuk. Rolled through the beams, and he gets the LB3A. Cornell, 020 light. Dead on 5. 567. And 120 mile per hour for the Camaro. All right, bye run for the round. We're going to go ahead and get Brian Lambton clear to the racetrack. He does the burnout, so I got to assume he's going to make a hit here. And then we'll pair up, I believe, the Schmal Vega versus the Folk 67 Camaro Roadster. .488 dial, 005 light, 495. 130 mile per hour for Lambton, rolling out of the throttle before the finish line. Brian Falk, Andy Schmall. Creeping her way up to find the pre-stage beam. Falk, 507 dial in to Mr. Gasket Lane. And Andy Schmall from Minnesota down 647 of the Vega over here on the lane side. All right, Brian into pre-stage beam. Andy creeps up there. His top two bulbs are lit. Brian's in. Andy bumps in very carefully. He's ready. False start. Andy Schmall goes wide by 100th of a second. He shuts her off. Falk, 504 on the 07 dial in. He was 3 thou under his green light. But again, having a slower car, Andy had the first one, had the opportunity to be the first to turn the red bulb on, and he did so. So Brian in the Roadster will move in. Matt Cornell, meanwhile, with the door car. Chevrolet Camaro, Monroe, Michigan, sponsored by Harlow Tire. Jim and the gang down there in Westland. And the Cornell's well up there with a 567 dial-in, getting set to take on Lambton. Taylor and Voltman car. 489 dial-in, Mr. Gasket side, Lambton. In the dragster, Cornell over here in the Camaro, 567. Big advantage in reaction time, go to Cornell. 015, 569. Matt gets it done. 118 mile per hour. Lambton 2 over, 491. At 141 mile per hour for the dragster. So Cornell's in the semis of the door car. Bill Riddle, Brian Horton come up next. Riddle and the Holloway Company. On the lane side, going to dial 481. 400ths of a second apart here as Brian Horton's going to get the opportunity to lead first. With that 485 dial on the American Race Cars entry. Mr. Gasket's side. Quarterfinal round for $5,000. False start for Brian, goes wide by 8 thousandths of a second. Riddle 009, 483 at the stripe, 138 mile per hour. Brian shuts off to a 526, goes 98 mile an hour, and Mad Dog Matt Hewitt. No burnout. He's going to roll up there. He's our official bye run of the round. Number one qualifier on the ladder, and he's just going to take the tree. So I believe the plan is to just back her up, park her in the staging lanes. And then wait for a few moments here where we get our semifinals arranged. And Brian Falk. Little surprised here. So I believe there were some problems, or at least perception-wise. There was anyway with the dragster in the shutdown area. The car had to be towed back after that previous round win. Still in with the Folkster, 67 Camaro Roadster. And the way the ladder shook out, he was to race himself here with 2 entries. And being as how that's physically impossible, Brian having to pick 1 or 2 cars, figures he has a better shot with the dragster. Brings that back up to the starting line. Puts it on the lane side. Throws a 479 on a dial-in board. And he'll take the tree and make this hit. 0:33 reaction time. 477. 16th thou under. 145 mile per hour. Here we go, semifinal round. Our $5,000 cleanup race. During our 19th annual running of the Huntsville Engine Performance $50,000 World Super Pro Challenge presented by Snuggle Race Fuels. Bill Riddle. Mad Dog Matt Hewitt. Hewitt to Mr. Gasket lane, 493 dial in. And Bill Riddle, 482 dial in on the lane side. Slight advantage, Bill Riddle. 13 foul to work with, 483, 137. Riddle team goes wild. 137 mile per hour, it's a 14 thousandths MOV. Matt Hewitt one over, goes 494 at 138 mile per hour. He was 29 green. Another half of the semis. This $5,000 to win race, and they already chopped a thou off the top. Little kicker going back to the semis. And Brian Falk squares off with last year's main event winner, Matt Cornell. 567 dial in, Mr. Gasket lane. The Chevrolet Camaro. And Brian Falk from Illinois, lane side, down 479. Tree fires in their way. Cornell out front, but Falk just made up for some of that handicap. 002 light, a couple rips at the stripe. He's safe with a 480, 138 mile per hour win. 200ths of a second margin of victory. Matt went over. 568 with a 0 at 120 after an 030 reaction time. Little NHRA Super Comp top dragster competitor. Was here last weekend with that car competing with the throttle stop on it in the NHRA Lucas Oil 890 class. Back 1 week later here to final round for $5,000. Taking on the Folk family. Brian over here on the lane side, Durand, Illinois. 479 dial in. 300ths of a second apart. Bill Riddle 482. Mr. Gasket lane. Both drivers ready and away. Falk covers him up on the starting line. 012, 480 with an O. 1 over to 141. 300's margin of victory there. Riddle, 483. He's 1 over the 6. At 136 mile per hour, but he lit a 43 lamp. Wasn't going to get it done in that one. Brian Falk, 012 late. With the win, a lot of smoke down there. A lot of smoke in the shutdown area. Word from the top end is that apparently Bill Riddle had a problem where he's apparently lost the brake fluid and the caliper blew up and he had no brakes. Parachute was out and a lot of smoke in the shutdown area. It looked like he went around a turn down there about 30 mile per hour, but he didn't make contact with anything hard. But he's safe and sound and stopped around the corner on the return road. Brian Falk, your winner.